You are listening to the series, Even After Death, by author EvilAuthor. Olivia Fordham was married to Ethan Miller for 3 years, but the time could not compare with the 10 years he spent loving his first love, Marina Carlton. On the day that she gets diagnosed with stomach cancer, Ethan happens to be accompanying Marina to her children's health checkup. She doesn't make any kind of fuss, only leaving quietly with the divorce agreement. However, this attracts an even more fervent retribution. It seems Ethan only ever married Olivia to take revenge for what happened to his little sister. While Olivia is plagued by her sickness, he holds her chin and says coldly, "This is what your family owes me." Now, she has no family and no future. Her father becomes comatose after a car accident, leaving her with nothing to live for. Thus, she hurls herself from a building. The life my family owes will now be repaid. At this, Ethan, who's usually calm, panics while begging for Olivia to come back as if he's in a state of frenzy. The following is the main content. Episode 6. Olivia raised the notebook in her hand. The notebook recorded all of Ethan's preferences. I haven't finished memorizing it yet. Mr. Miller takes his coffee with 3 cubes of sugar. He likes his steak rare. His favorite fruits are cherries and blueberries. Olivia shut the notebook. She looked at Ethan seriously. I seem to recall that you hated those fruits the most. You only eat medium rare steaks, and you never put any sugar in your coffee. If William hadn't reminded her not to get anything wrong, she would have thought that someone was setting her up for failure at the workplace. The list of preferences was the complete opposite of what Ethan actually liked. Ethan took the notebook from her hands and said, "You don't have to care about that." Ethan did not like people knowing about his preference. No one knew about his actual preferences except Olivia. You need only do as you're told. The light from the laptop screen shone on Ethan's face. It made his expression look even colder. Olivia suddenly realized that she had never truly understood Ethan, whom she slept with. Ethan at work was a completely different person. She nodded and said, "I'll get used to it." Olivia frowned and looked at her serious expression. He found it hard to believe that she was going to be his secretary. How did she change so much in a day? Ethan had a lot of work piled up due to Olivia and Connor's disappearance a while ago. Even at home, he was still having video conferences and reading emails. Olivia took her laptop to the bed after she showered. Luckily, the restrictions Ethan put on her were temporarily lifted. She began searching for information on the laptop. She took particular notice of Ethan's schedule on the day of Jeff's car accident. It was Ethan and Leia's birthday that day. Usually, he wouldn't have anything planned on that day. But the G20 summit was held on that day. Ethan had to attend and give a speech because he was the chairman. It didn't matter if he went from the office or the Miller residence to the G20 summit venue. He wouldn't have gone past the street where the accident happened. That was unless he wanted to witness Jeff's death at the scene because he planned the whole thing. The other possibility was that he had no choice but to go there. There were several accidents on that day. It wasn't hard to look up. Olivia quickly found the news reports of the accidents. In the articles, Olivia saw 2 other car accidents that happened on Linden Street. Although they weren't as severe as Jeff's, they were enough to cause traffic jams. Coincidentally, Ethan's car showed up in one of the video clips. Even though it only appeared for a few frames, Olivia quickly spotted it. The clip was posted exactly 30 minutes before Jeff's accident. The street was the optimal path toward the G20 summit. Ethan's appearance here meant that he had intended to go to the summit. He only changed course because of the car accident. That was why he showed up at the scene of Jeff's accident. Olivia felt a chill down her spine when she saw the video. Her suspicions were confirmed. Someone else had been manipulating things from behind the scenes since 2 years ago. Both Ethan and her were pawns in that person's plan. Even her father's accident was planned by that person. It was done so that the blame would be pinned on Ethan. The person wanted to use her to hurt Connor in her anger. That would, in turn, hurt Ethan. It would also cause their relationship to be completely irreparable. If she hadn't changed her mind at the last second, Connor would have been dead. This person was wicked. Ethan opened the door and walked in. He glanced at her and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ethan saw the color drain from Olivia's face when he walked in. She looked very pale and unwell, even to the untrained eyes. Her hands were also shaking slightly. He frowned and quickly walked toward her. "What are you looking at?" Olivia did not try to hide it. Ethan saw the horrible accident. The scene was bloody. It was no wonder she looked pale. "There's nothing to see here." Ethan thought she accidentally came across the video. He was about to turn it off before he realized something was wrong. That wasn't a recent accident. Olivia turned her phone off and asked with a seemingly casual tone, "So, you were at the scene of my father's accident?" Ethan did not know that this was the reason she wanted to harm Connor before. So when she suddenly brought it up, he looked her in the eyes and said, "Yes. I was headed for the G20 summit that day. But there was an accident on the road, so I changed course. But I didn't expect to get to the scene of your father's accident." It was like what Olivia had thought. She was sure that someone was manipulating them in the shadows. And she almost became a tool for someone else's revenge plot. The person set up the incident with Leia's gravestone to let Ethan misunderstand Olivia. Then, there was the car accident that caused Olivia to misunderstand Ethan. So, the person's the reason why Ethan and Olivia were the way they were. This person was absolutely vile. Ethan saw that Olivia's face had become even paler. He realized that something was wrong. He said, "Are you thinking that I was the one that planned that accident?" He turned Olivia around by her shoulders. He said with a stern expression, "Stop your unrealistic delusions, Olivia. If I wanted to hurt him, he would have died a long time ago." Ethan continued in an icy tone, "And if I had wanted to hurt him, I wouldn't have dragged innocent people into it. I wouldn't have used other people's lives to cover up the truth. I have countless ways to kill somebody without raising suspicion." Before he could finish talking, Olivia dove into his embrace and put her arms around his waist. "I believe you," she said. Ethan reached out and held her chin. He forced her to meet his gaze. He was glaring at Olivia like an angry beast. "I don't know what you're plotting. It's true, our breakup was ugly. I haven't treated you well these 2 years. I can understand if you hate me or if you blame me for your suffering. I am also clear that we could not go back to how it used to be, Olivia." He held her tightly and continued, "Even if we hated each other, and the path forward is tough, I will never let you go. Because of you, I would never hurt your father. No matter how much I hated him, nor how much I wanted him to die." Olivia's hand was hurting from his tight grip. His gaze was intense. It caused her face to flush and her heart to beat faster. Ethan slowly said everything he had been keeping to himself. "It's because I knew that if he died, our relationship would be completely severed. That was why I wouldn't let him die. I was the first one to call for an ambulance on the scene." Olivia was shocked. It seemed like she didn't expect him to do something like that. Given that it had come to this point, Ethan let out a deep sigh and said, "I have never had the intention to kill him back then nor right now. So you should keep your thoughts in check. It is below me to do such a thing." Olivia would never have believed him in the past. But she understood everything now, even if Ethan didn't explain himself. She opened her mouth. At that very moment, she had an urge to tell Ethan about everything. The idea flashed through her mind momentarily. But Ethan's scornful face quickly filled her thoughts. She knew that Ethan could take her words as she was trying to get her father off the hook. He had already mocked her countless times for her schemes. Moreover, if she told him what she knew before uncovering the truth, it might alert the mastermind and force him to switch things up. So, she suppressed her urge to tell Ethan what she knew. In reality, the existence of a mastermind wouldn't have affected their relationship. It was the fact that Ethan had an affair. Olivia was more composed than she used to be. She responded with a muffled sound. Olivia's mind was clearer than it ever was after she got the reply she wanted. She clutched Ethan's clothes tightly. Uncovering the truth had become her only reason to be alive. Thank you for calling the ambulance. There is no need to look at something that happened so long ago. Let's go to bed. Ethan thought that Olivia was just frightened. He held her and went to sleep. The strange thing was that Olivia didn't mention Marina to him. It was as if they were back to how they were. But that was just a ruse. Olivia opened her eyes after Ethan fell asleep and moved away from him. She almost moved to the edge of the bed. She didn't want to have any physical contact with him. Ethan was true to his word. The next morning, Olivia heard a familiar voice early in the morning. Wow, what a beautiful house. Jerry, can you make a painting of it? The timid teenager beside him tugged at him and said, you should tone it down a little when you're on someone else's turf. Don't forget how scary that man could be. Olivia heard their voices while she was going down the stairs. She immediately ran down the stairs. She saw the bright faces of the teenagers. Ms. Olivia. Olivia walked down the remaining steps and approached the teenagers. She was pleasantly surprised. How did you guys get here? A bunch of men came to the island yesterday. Some were measuring stuff, and some were roaming around. Some people even gave us some supplies. We were brought here early in the morning today. Wasn't it you who sent those people, Ms. Olivia? Olivia didn't expect Ethan to move so quickly. She quickly nodded. Ethan's voice came from around the corner. Are you happy now? The two teenagers instinctively shielded Olivia behind their backs. They didn't expect to meet Ethan here. Don't be afraid, he won't hurt me. Olivia had already noticed the hint of anger in Ethan's eyes. She went up to him and held his arm. Why did you bring them here? She asked. Aren't you the one who cares so much about them? Ethan pointed at Jerry and said, I've handled their enrollment procedures. This one has talent in painting. So he is going to study at a professional art college. As for that troublemaker, the police academy suits him. Olivia didn't know what price Ethan had to pay to get him into the institutions. But she was happy that he thought about that. Thank you, Olivia said wholeheartedly. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks and said, I've asked the HR department to handle your job application. Come to work on time, 3 days from now. Ethan left without having breakfast. It was as if he was deliberately giving them some time together. Olivia realized that he seemed to have changed. He felt a little like his former self. As soon as he left, Tom and Jerry became talkative. They asked her about everything. They handed her a piece of paper when no one was around. It had a phone number written on it. Olivia called the number. A familiar voice came from the phone. It's me. Are you doing okay? Yeah. Jack's voice was still emotionless. Olivia told him about what happened on the island. He wasn't too surprised. I knew you would keep your promise. Olivia bit her lip and told him her concerns. Jack, can you help me with something? You're the only one I trust right now. Jack agreed to Olivia's request without any hesitation. Tom and Jerry spent a long time catching up with Olivia. Ms. Olivia, Jack left the island shortly after you did. He should have come to Aldenvine. If you need his help, you can contact him in private. Do you guys know his background? Olivia felt that Jack was very mysterious. He was a man who owned a lot of firearms. And she still doesn't know what he looked like. The information that Calvin dug up was definitely going to be limited. Jack was different. He might have special channels to gather more information. In addition, Jack was a mysterious entity. The mastermind would not know about his existence. Jack washed up on our shores a few years ago. He was on the brink of death when he arrived. Mum saved his life. He didn't seem to have any family, so he stayed on our island. But I think he might be an incredible person. His marksmanship is excellent. Tom scratched his head in embarrassment at the mention of marksmanship. Ms. Olivia. I was too nervous that day. I almost hit you accidentally. But your ex-husband was good to you. He protected you almost instinctively. Tom was honest with his emotions. It was true that he hated Ethan. But he was also able to acknowledge his good qualities. Olivia didn't want to talk about Ethan. She patted him on the head and said, "You have been given a unique chance. So, you have to study hard to make a name for yourself and make Martha proud." Understood, Ms. Olivia. Since she hadn't started work yet, Olivia brought them to visit a famous local art exhibit. It was the first time Jerry was in such a close encounter with these art pieces. He was immensely moved. He did not know where to look. Tom did not understand him. He shrugged and said, "I know there are book nerds. I think he's an art nerd. What's so interesting about these paintings? His reaction is too over the top." Olivia laughed softly and said, "It's only natural you can't feel what he feels. It's because you don't share his passion for art." She was able to put down her hatred temporarily when she was with them. It was as if she was back on the island, living a carefree life. She saw that Jerry was standing in front of a painting for a long time. She approached him and asked, "What are you looking at? You look like you're in a trance." Jerry snapped back into reality. His eyes were filled with joy, shining like stars in the night. "Ms. Olivia, look at this painting. It is so exquisite." Olivia looked at the painting and was taken aback. This painting. The painting depicted a sunrise in the mountains. The sunlight burst forth from beyond the hills and showered its light on everything, giving them a golden glow. The mountains were lush with greenery. Birds were soaring in the air, and squirrels were carrying pine cones on trees. In the distance, there was a cottage with smoke rising from its chimney. A stream of water flowed down the edge of the mountains. It felt like the painting encompassed all of creation. It depicted an image full of life and gave off a feeling of being immersed in the beauty of life. "Ms. Olivia, do you know who painted this? That person must be so enlightened and kind-hearted." Olivia pursed her lips and muttered slowly, "I painted this." "What, you painted this, Ms. Olivia?" Jerry had seen Olivia's current style before. It was completely different from the painting in front of them. Olivia almost forgot that she used to study under the master painter Constantine Harrington. The heirs of wealthy families were provided with quality education from a young age. Olivia happened to have a talent for many things and was the final student of Constantine. She painted this at the age of 13. But she didn't expect it to be displayed in an art exhibit. She recalled her brilliant achievements in the past and compared them to her misfortune. Everything changed because of one man. It was too pitiful. Olivia suddenly heard a commotion coming from the side. It would seem like someone important had arrived. Tom was sucking on a lollipop. He pointed not far away and said, "Ms. Olivia, isn't that Connor?" Olivia looked toward where he was pointing and saw the familiar faces. It was Ethan and his family. Marina was carrying Connor in her arms and holding Ethan's arm with a smile. Jerry tried to block Olivia's line of sight by standing in front of her. "Don't look, Ms. Olivia." On the other hand, Tom burst out in curses, "I take back what I said about him. He betrayed his wife. He's scum. Don't look at a scum like him, Ms. Olivia. You don't have to dirty your eyes by looking at him." Olivia's heart ached for a bit. Ethan was married to Marina. It didn't change anything, even if Ethan held her captive and slept next to her every night. Marina wanted to solidify her status. So, she planned for open shows of affection between her and Ethan. She also showed up in public places with Ethan in tow. She didn't expect to see Olivia here and held Ethan's arm tighter. It was her way of showing off her victory. It was a simple strategy, but it was effective. Ethan watched as Olivia brought Tom and Jerry to another area of the exhibit. He then withdrew his hand from Marina's clutches. In the past, he was still courteous to Marina. But now, he wasn't even willing to keep up appearances with her. Marina's face twisted in hatred. She said in a low voice, "Are you going to look for that bitch? Ethan Miller, do not forget that I am your fiancé now." Ethan lowered his face to look at Marina, who was throwing a tantrum. In the past, he complied with Marina's wishes and respected her. He had held their siblinghood and childhood friendship highly. But now that Marina has shown her true colors to him, he couldn't stand the sight of her. "You wanted me to keep up appearances with you, and I did," Ethan said coldly. There was no compassion for her in his eyes. "Now, everyone thinks that we're a loving couple." Marina watched as Ethan left. Her face contorted in anger, and hatred filled her heart. She had a bad feeling. Ethan seemed to hate Olivia less and less. His love for Olivia seemed to be growing. She went to a corner angrily and dialed an unfamiliar number. She said, "I've considered your proposal. I accept." The voice over the phone said with a hint of joy, "You're a smart woman, Ms. Carlton." Marina wasn't able to tell if the voice came from a man or a woman. "What do you want me to do? You'll need to endure a little suffering." "I don't mind suffering a little if I can get Ethan back to me." Marina's eyes were filled with hatred. She continued, "This time, I want her to lose completely." "As you wish, Ms. Carlton," the voice said in an amused tone that sent chills down Marina's spine. The light cast a long shadow behind Olivia. It made her seem more isolated and lonely. That was until she suddenly collided with someone. She raised her head and met Ethan's gaze. They were in a blind spot of the security cameras. No one noticed them. Olivia moved away calmly. She said in a flat tone, "You shouldn't be here, Ethan. You'll have to waste money on PR if we're caught on camera." Even though she was looking out for him, her voice was unbelievably calm. Ethan was unable to feel that she cared about him. He suddenly realized that compared to the current composed Olivia, he preferred the Olivia of the past, who would get jealous. "Is this what you are concerned about?" Ethan's voice carried a hint of coldness. Olivia was confused. She said, "The makings of a good mistress are obedience and not causing trouble for her man." Ethan tightened his hands on her shoulders. He said with a smirk, "Well, you sure know your place, mistress." Olivia felt a stab of pain in her heart. What else could it be? "You're getting engaged with Ms. Carlton. So what would our relationship be described in the olden times? Would I be a second wife? A concubine? We've got lots of names for that in the modern day, too. What should I address myself as? A lover, side chick, or mistress? Which do you prefer, Ethan?" Even though Olivia was being so docile, he felt a sense of unexplainable mystery to her. That caused him to feel uneasy. It would have been in his nature to hold her captive by his side after he brought her back from the island. But he suppressed his desire to do that. Instead, he gave her freedom and fulfilled her wishes. He even took extra care of Tom and Jerry. He thought that if he did so much for her, she would be so happy that her eyes lit up. In reality, she was calm. There were no emotions in her eyes. No matter how much he did for her, it didn't stir her emotions even a little. Olivia's calm face was reflected in his icy gaze. "Olivia, enough is enough." Ethan's voice was filled with uncontrollable anger. "Even if I marry her, it would not affect your position at all." His words sounded like he was doing her a favor. Olivia smiled. The mockery in her smile was apparent. "She already has the position of Mrs. Miller, what else do I have to give?" Before Ethan could reply, Olivia reached out to adjust his collar. She didn't want to stay on that topic. After all, if they ended up in a fight, she would have to make an effort to appease him. "All right, go back to your fiancé. I know my place. I won't put you on the spot." She took a step back and continued, "Thanks for not holding a grudge against Tom and Jerry." Ethan watched Olivia disappear from his sight with his mouth open. Olivia was back at his side, but she lost her spark. It was like his words passed right through her. He reassured himself with the thought that she loved him a lot and that she was just sad for the moment. He told himself that she would run back to him soon. She would be that woman that only had him in her eyes. Olivia brought the boys to a lot of places. Their smiles never ceased. She patted them on the head and said with a smile, "Study well. You will definitely make a name for yourselves in this city. We won't disappoint you, Miss Olivia." Jerry raised his fists into the air. "Miss Olivia, why didn't you become a painter? You're so talented," he asked in confusion. Olivia bit on her straw and said, "Painting is only a hobby of mine. I prefer to practice medicine. But I gave that up for a man. I became the way I am now because of him. I cannot paint like when I was 13. So, choose your love wisely." The sweetness of the milk tea was not able to soothe the pain she felt in her heart. Now, even her stomach was starting to hurt. She hadn't vomited blood much recently. But the stomach pains would not subside quickly. She took some pain medication and brought the boys to play in an escape room. Although Olivia was only 7 to 8 years older than the boys, she felt a sense of motherly love. She wanted them to play at all the places they had never been to before and eat the food they hadn't tried before. Even when they said they didn't like sweets, she forced them to try some because they never tried them before. She even declared that they must have everything that the other children had. After they entered the escape room, she reassured them and said, "Don't be afraid. I'll protect you too." 3 seconds after they entered, a deathly pale person jumped out from a dormitory bed. Olivia yelled, "Ah, run!" She didn't have time to think. She grabbed someone's arm and began running. Realization struck her after she ran some distance. She didn't look at who she grabbed before she ran. That would mean that one of the boys was left at the scene. Oh no, who did she grab? She turned to look. But she was face to face with a deathly pale face, with very long hair. Ah, what the hell, did she grab the ghost? Her mouth was covered up by a hand mid-scream. She was then dragged to a cabinet nearby. There was barely any light in the cabinet. Olivia was trembling in fear. She would not have come if she knew how scary it was. A familiar voice suddenly started laughing softly next to her. The person was amused by her fear. The voice resembled someone she knew. At that moment, a prop lamp was turned on. Eerie green light shone on his deathly pale face. Olivia was about to scream, then the voice said, "It's me." Olivia paused and swallowed nervously. She called out his name carefully, "Jack." "Yeah." The usually reserved man's voice had a hint of joy. "I'm sorry we have to meet this way. I didn't know you were so easily scared." The truth was he had no intention of scaring Olivia. He dressed up as a ghost so that he could evade the bodyguards. He didn't expect to be grabbed and dragged along by Olivia before he could speak. Olivia patted herself on the chest and said, "You scared me to death." Jack has never seen Olivia so frightened, not even when he had a knife against her throat when they feet met. She looked Olivia this way. "Okay, let's get back to the main issue. I've got ahead on the persons you asked me to look into." Fax stopped teasing her and updated her on his investigation. "What did you find?" "The Ryan you mentioned didn't come back to the country recently. Occasionally, he travels overseas on business trips." Olivia was not surprised that something was fishy. Don't yarn. The toes that the mastermind had come down flat around Burr and Ethan. When she was at her wit's end, Ryan was the pawn that the mastermind placed close to Th. The information that Lee Und was only the informs that the Mattison wanted here to know. It was still up for debate how much of the information was true is the report than Hal. The truth was still under wraps because Felf was still unconscious in the buspatat. The mastermind knew Jet's importance to Obvia file was an important place of the puzzle. Wadey was why he was going to be used as the most integral part of the scheme. "Can you find out who Ryan is working for?" Jack was frowning. Although his face was painted white, Cuvier could see that he had a strong jawline. His fox fates were well defined and sharp. He was definitely a good-looking guy underneath the face paint. I didn't hear enough time. So, I haven't moved anything about that yet, but I have something to you. In reality, Fact didn't think he needed that inch homte sebheim your time just to be salu. There wimething else I need you to help me with other than lanking into people to be allow any tech mate without facilitation. What is 17? Find a good nursing home for my father. His current location is no longer safe. He could become a forsaken pawn at any time. You need to take him away without anyone knowing. I can't do it because that person must have someone spying on me and Ethan. You're the only one I can trust. Olivia felt like she was asking too much of Jack. They weren't family or friends. She added, I only have $500 million left now. I can't take this money with me to the afterlife. I will leave it to you as compensation. Jack looked at her with a hint of condescension. Our deal was the island. You have kept your word. That's enough for me. Olivia nodded and said, there's one more thing I need your help with. Yes, take me away from here. I want to go and investigate Belle. She is full of secrets. Olivia snuck out the back door with Jack. She also changed into new clothes. She was surprised by Jack's incredible skill in disguise. He just stuck a few things on her face and easily changed her facial features. He then added a layer of powder and made her look about 10 years older. Jack's face was the same. He disguised himself as a middle-aged man. He looked completely different from his usual self. They headed to the Harmony Psychiatric Hospital. Olivia impersonated Belle's distant relative and met the hospital director. Jack did not show himself. He flipped over the metal fence with relative ease. Olivia was shocked at the sight. Even if the fence wasn't electrocuted, there were spikes on top. She didn't understand how Jack was able to pull it off. They decided to divide and conquer. Olivia told the director why she was there. The director displayed a hint of regret. Sigh, the poor kid was sad. Her parents never visited her even though she was here for such a long time. No one even came for the body. Olivia initially thought that the body would have been cremated already. She didn't expect it to still be in the morgue. Don't worry, director, we'll give her a good funeral after we get her out of here. Her parents are overseas. It's hard for them to come back. I'll handle her funeral. Also, do you have her belongings? All right, I have collected all her belongings. Come with me. Olivia stopped when she walked by the ward she visited last time. She said, can I take a look inside? Sure. Her roommates were all moved after she died, so this ward is also empty. Olivia pushed open the door. The decor of the room looked more desolate than before. There were only beds and cabinets in the room. The walls were also painted white. Sunlight came into the room through the windows. It illuminated the dust in the air. The desolate room was like Belle's life, rife with despair. This is so sad. My niece had excellent grades in school. Who would have known that it would come to this? We were counting on her to be the pride of our family. The director agreed, it is indeed sad. She was such a pretty little lady. Hey, director, are we the only ones to ever visit her? Not even her parents care. Needless to say, no one else came. Oh, I think I remember a boy who came once. He looked like her, but Belle was triggered at the sight of the boy. She lost control. The boy never came again after that. Olivia's expression turned serious when she heard that. What did the boy look like? He was pretty tall. His skin was a little tanned. He looked like a university student. Director, can you look him up on the visitors' records? I can. But why do you want to look that up? The director looked at Olivia curiously. Olivia sighed again and said, I didn't want to say it. But my poor niece was driven to madness because she was deceived and got pregnant in school. She dropped out of school in despair due to that. I just wanted to see who was the person that made her this way. My niece's parents didn't really love her. But I have liked her since she was a kid. If I wasn't stuck overseas, I would have come for her long ago. All right, I'll look it up for you. The director was able to find the boy's name very quickly. The boy's name was Paul Cruz. Then, he handed Belle's belongings to Olivia. Olivia expressed her gratitude to him. "It's nothing much. At least I got to see it through to the end." The director waved his hand. Olivia went on to ask, "I heard that there was a doctor who took care of my niece when she was still alive. I want to thank her in person." "There's no need for that. Dr. Galloway has already resigned." Olivia feigned surprise and said, "Really? That's a pity. I heard that she was a good doctor." "Dr. Galloway is indeed a good doctor. She took good care of Belle in the 2 years. I guess she just couldn't accept Belle's sudden death. But that is her choice. We can only respect it." Olivia asked the director a few more questions on and off again. Then, she bid farewell to the director and went to the funeral home to take care of Belle's remains. Olivia made her intentions known at the funeral home. An employee said, "I'll have to remind you that this body died by jumping off a building. Her family didn't pay for funeral expenses. The body was taken here and left in the freezer. We didn't even do basic embalming on it. In addition, the body has been here for 2 months. You might need to brace yourself for the decomposition." The employee brought them to the room where the bodies were stored while he was talking. He said nonchalantly, "Most of the bodies were not collected by anyone. We would deal with them after they've been left here for a certain amount of time. You're lucky that the body you're looking for is still here." He stopped walking, pointed at a mortuary cabinet, and said, "This is it. Do you want to say your goodbyes? If not, we can have it cremated straight away." It was Olivia's first time in a place like this. The room was freezing. The cold seeped in from the bottom and spread through her body. It also felt like countless eyes were looking at her from behind. It took all her energy to remain standing in the room. "Don't be afraid," Jack said softly. Olivia's hands were covered in cold sweat. She said in a low tone, "We want to say our goodbyes." "Okay, but don't take too long. I'll be waiting outside." The employee left. A gust of wind came out of nowhere. It scared Olivia so much that she jumped into Jack's arms. Jack held her waist and sighed lightly. "You're not suited for a place like this. Wait for me outside. I'll be out in a while." But Jack's expression was stern. "I've seen a lot of dead people, all sorts of corpses." Olivia wasn't willing to leave, no matter what he said. Jack said sheepishly, "All right, you keep your eyes closed. I'll describe to you what I see." "Okay." Olivia agreed to his suggestion. She moved behind Jack. Her gaze was focused on the patterns on Jack's black jacket. She felt his arms exert force. His arms reached out and pulled at the lever. His actions were smooth. When the body was pulled out, they were hit with a stench of decay. Olivia's stomach was already unwell. The stench made her stomach worse. She immediately covered her mouth and retched. She wanted to raise her eyes to look. But her eyes were suddenly covered by Jack's palm. His palm was warm. It blocked out all the light. Jack's voice came from next to her. "Don't look. The body is a little gruesome." The article that Olivia saw Belle's body on was covered by mosaic. There were a lot of red mosaics. She knew that blood was everywhere. But it was worse than that now. The body had been sitting here for a long time. Even if it was in a freezer, the body had decomposed and looked very frightening. In the end, Jack didn't describe the body to Olivia. He felt his palm itch when her eyelashes scraped on it as she blinked. It was like his palm was running across the soft fur of some small animal. He was probably the only person that could have drifting thoughts while next to a body. Olivia said, "Have you found anything suspicious?" Jack came back to his senses and said, "Please wait for a moment." He turned Olivia's body in another direction and said, "Close your eyes and wait for a few minutes." There were only rustling sounds in the quiet room. Olivia clutched her clothes tightly and asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm pulling her clothes up." Jack's voice was calm. But Olivia was shivering in fright, even if she knew that Jack was just trying to check if Belle had aborted the child. There are stretch marks on her stomach. Normally, the optimal time for abortions is between the 1st and 3rd month of pregnancy. The baby will already be formed in the 5th to 6th month. Stretch marks only start to appear in the later months. Let me double-check if the baby was aborted. Olivia tensed and asked shakily, "How are you going to check?" Her abdomen has stretch marks but no signs of a cesarean section. "We just need to check her cervix, but it's a bit dark here. Can you help me shine a light?" Olivia almost collapsed to the floor in fright. How do you know? She knew these things because she was a medical student. But how did Jack know? "I've learned about dissection, so I know a little. Keep your eyes closed. Just help me shine a light." Jack saw that Olivia was indecisive. He said in a low voice, "There's no time to get a forensic expert. We need to do it now before the body gets cremated." Olivia nodded and said, "I know, She turned over and saw the body. Her stomach became upset, and she started gagging. Olivia had seen the bodies of old deceased people in the family. But those were different compared to this gruesome body. Even though she didn't get a clear look at Belle's face, it was enough to make her gag. Jack patted her on the back to help her breathe. "Are you okay?" "I'm sorry," Olivia said apologetically. "I can understand. People don't normally see dead bodies, much less decomposed ones. Why aren't you afraid?" "I got used to seeing them." Jack's voice was calm. There was a distant look in his eyes. "And living humans are more horrifying than the dead ones." Olivia didn't know what he had been through. He only looked a few years older than her, but he was shrouded in mystery. She knew that he had to have been through a lot of suffering to become like that. Maybe she wasn't the only one that was suffering in the world. Olivia pushed down the fear in her heart and turned on the flashlight. "I'll shine the light for you. Take a look quickly." "Okay. Close your eyes and leave the rest to me," Jack ordered calmly. Olivia quickly closed her eyes to not delay the process. Jack put his hand on her wrist. His voice came from beside her. "I'm sorry." He held her wrist and led her before the body. His hand felt especially warm in the cold room. Olivia heard rustling sounds again. It was probably Jack taking off the body's pants. Luckily, the pants from the psychiatric hospital were loose. It didn't take him much effort to get it off. Although she couldn't see, Olivia could imagine Jack's progress in her mind based on the sounds she heard. She was holding the flashlight high. "I'm done," Jack told Olivia. "Don't open your eyes yet. Let me put the body back inside." Olivia asked impatiently, "How was it?" "Her cervix is torn horizontally. Normally, the cervix of someone who hasn't given birth is round, so this confirms that she did give birth to a child." "Yes." Jack left with Olivia. He also paid the funeral expenses for Belle and asked the employees to give her a proper burial. "She's finally going to get a proper burial after so long. It was my fault, after all. Maybe she wouldn't have died so early if not for me." Jack shook his head and said, "That may not be the case. I found out that someone had been injecting her with prohibited drugs constantly before her death. The drugs messed with her mental state. She didn't have long to live, even if you didn't show up." She said someone took her baby. Who could it be? Could it be that her parents took her child overseas? It's impossible to say for sure now. But we got a lot of leads today. Leave the rest to me. I'll send you back first. "Oh, that's right. Here's a phone. You can use this to contact me next time." Jack handed her a phone that he had taken out of his pocket. She thought about how easily Ethan could find her phone records. She would be discovered sooner or later if she contacted Jack with her phone. "Thank you. The best compensation you can give is your help to the people of the island." Olivia went back to the escape room and left with the boys. Tom's face was pale. He looked like he had a good scare. On the other hand, Jerry looked calm. He was even supporting Tom as they walked out. "It's all faked. Were you so scared that you had to jump into the arms of a ghost?" The image of Tom doing that brought a smile to Olivia's face. I didn't expect Tom to be so timid. Miss Olivia, you weren't there to see. Tom was so scared that he started to sob. It was so funny. Shut up. The boys quickly began to fight with each other. The cheery atmosphere washed away the sadness brought on by Belle's death. A car stopped by the road. The window was rolled down to reveal Ethan's cold expression. Get in the car. Olivia was surprised. She didn't expect Ethan to come to fetch her. Although she had entrusted everything to Jack, she was still nervous when she got in the car. She felt like Ethan would be able to see through her right away. After they got in the car, Ethan asked something he had never asked before. Did you have fun? It was okay. It was a little scary. Tom was so scared he sobbed. Her expression was calm even though her words were cheery. Ethan calmly withdrew his gaze from her face. He had thought that she would become her old cheerful self if he allowed her to spend time with the boy. Their relationship wasn't the only thing that couldn't go back to the way it was. The same applied to Olivia herself. In the past, when they were sitting together, she would hold his hands and keep talking. It was like her mouth didn't need rest at all. Unlike now, she sat properly. Her fingers were holding onto the armrest. Her eyes were looking out the window. She only spoke up to answer his question. When they didn't speak, it was as if there was a mountain between them. No one spoke another word on the ride back home. The atmosphere was suffocating. Olivia could feel Ethan's gaze on her. Her heart was beating fast. She was wondering if he had found out that she ran off. After all, he had warned her last night. He was willing to help develop the island and ensure the living standards on the island were acceptable. He had only one condition, that she stop seeing Jack. She had sworn to do that not long ago. She went back on her word the very next day. She wondered what he was thinking about. He didn't speak. His gaze was like a sharp knife that was cutting her up. Olivia sighed in relief when they reached the Miller residence, and he didn't confront her. Olivia felt a pain in her wrist. Ethan pulled her toward him. She fell into his embrace. Her palms were pushing against his chest weakly. She looked up at him in confusion. There was a hint of bewilderment in her eyes. What? Ethan frowned and said in a low voice, Olivia, I said I'm going to the Carltons for dinner. Olivia nodded and said, I know that. Don't worry. I won't bother you with calls asking you to come back. She recalled how she used to be. She developed severe mental issues due to feelings of anxiety. She would bombard him with calls if he didn't get home by 6 p.m. Her calls would annoy him so much that he would turn off his phone. Then, she would reheat the food a few times. She would also pace around the house nervously. She found that version of herself quite detestable. It wasn't just Ethan. Even she herself felt disgusted when thinking about it. She was still Mrs. Miller back then. Now, she had already come to terms with her position. Naturally, she would not stand in Ethan's way anymore. In the past, she felt like even the air was holding her captive. She often felt like she was suffocating. But now that she didn't care for him as much, she felt like she had regained freedom. Ethan was the one who was uncomfortable now. There was a time when she was so tense that she wouldn't allow him to socialize normally with others. Whenever she heard that he was going out to eat, she would grab his hand with an anxious expression and beg him to keep her company. But now, she looked like she didn't care at all. Her face was completely calm. He tightened his grip on her wrist unknowingly. The pain caused Olivia to frown. It hurts. What are you doing? I'm not stopping you, Olivia said in an annoyed tone. Ethan said in a deep voice, are you not going to care even if I sleep elsewhere? Olivia asked without hesitation, are you not coming back tonight? Ethan could sense a hint of joy in her serious expression. He was taken aback. Did she feel happy that he threatened not to come home? Olivia did feel a little happy about that. In the few nights that she had slept with him, there were a few times he almost lost control. No matter what he felt toward her, all she wanted was to stay as far away from him as possible. Ethan grabbed her chin and rubbed her lips with his thumb. "You don't want me to come home?" Olivia thought about how annoying she used to be. She said with a serious expression, "You're Marina's fiancé now, and your engagement party is approaching. You must not fight with her because of me. And if rumors spread about us, it would also impact the Miller Group's stock price." Olivia tapped his hand and assured him, "Don't worry. I will not pester you like I used to. I promise to let you experience a peaceful night." Olivia thought that Ethan shouldn't mess with her anymore since she made such a sincere promise. He might even feel like she was being very mature. She thought her words would make Ethan happy. But his expression grew angrier. His grip on her chin also tightened. Was she not sincere enough? Olivia furrowed her eyebrows in thought. Ethan couldn't see any signs of reluctance or sadness in her eyes. He withdrew his hand and said, "As you wish. I'll be staying over at the Carltons tonight." "All right, I'll go back in for dinner now." Olivia opened the door and got out of the car as soon as he loosened his grip. Ethan was not able to detect any hint of sadness on her face before she left. Ethan watched her leave and thought she didn't feel the slightest bit of sadness with how eagerly she left. Did she really get over him completely? Their divorce was less than 3 months ago. Kelvin saw Ethan's cold expression through the rearview mirror. He asked carefully, "Mr. Miller, should we depart now?" Ethan took a deep breath and asked, "What did she do today?" "Who did she meet?" "Nothing much. She went to the art exhibit for a while. Then, she went shopping. She also went to some amusement facilities for young people for the whole afternoon. She didn't meet anyone." Ethan frowned and said, "Watch her closely." Ethan would have thought that she fell for someone else. But he had confirmed that nothing happened between her and the man on the island. He didn't really understand himself. His feelings overcame his hatred for her. But as time went on, he felt like it became harder for him to leave Olivia. Olivia was the complete opposite. She no longer had any feelings of attachment to him. There was no longer a twinkle in her eyes when she looked at him. He lowered his head to look at his phone. When they were still close, she never stopped calling or messaging him. Back then, he would take some time to reply, no matter how busy he was. Even when their relationship deteriorated, and he treated her coldly on purpose, she would still send him a dozen messages every day. Unlike now, she didn't call or send him any messages throughout the entire day. Ethan realized he was no longer the most important person to her. He felt like someone was grabbing his heart tightly. How would he have known that Olivia started to walk on eggshells around him? She was afraid that anything she did would anger him. She only hoped to stay as far away from him as possible so that she wouldn't incur his wrath. She knew her place now. She knew she no longer had the right to order him around. Her heart had been tormented by Ethan and Marina over the 2 years. No matter how much conviction she had, it was all gone. Olivia went straight to her bedroom. She didn't even eat dinner. She could see Belle's body when she closed her eyes and could only hope that Jack could uncover the truth as soon as possible. She went to sleep after showering. She had no idea Ethan was checking his phone every now and again. He thought that Olivia couldn't possibly feel nothing after he said he would be staying with the Carltons tonight. After a few rounds of alcohol on the dinner table, Chris slammed his glass hard on the table. He was a soldier who survived the battlefields. He had an intimidating presence and was exuding coldness. Chris, who was usually reserved, said coldly, "If you don't want to have dinner with us, just get out." Chloe quickly held his hand. She tried to de-escalate the situation with a smile. "Are you listening to yourself? Ethan has finally come to visit. Why are you giving him this attitude? Do you think you're talking to one of your fresh recruits in the army?" She then looked at Ethan with a smile. "Ethan, please don't blame him for that. He is used to being in the army. He still thinks of himself as a soldier even though he's been out of the army for so long." Marina also chipped in, "Dad, Please understand that Ethan is usually very busy. He might have work that he has to deal with. In the past, Chris was happy about Ethan. But he started to feel uncomfortable when he found out that Olivia was Ethan's ex-wife. They were in the same circle. Chris knew exactly how many people Ethan broke regulations and mobilized to save Olivia and Connor. The men in the Carlton family all had fiery tempers. Chris said, "It's been more than a year since Marina gave birth to your child. But you had to insist on an engagement party before the marriage. Not only has the engagement been delayed repeatedly, you haven't even registered the marriage. You need to let me know today. Are you marrying my daughter or not?" "Dad, you don't have to be so aggressive. We're all family here. We can talk about it slowly," Marina said. "That's right. Calm down. You're scaring him," Chloe added. Chloe and Marina were on the same front on this matter. Otto Carlton, who had not spoken a word, suddenly slammed his spoon on the table. "Enough. All of you shut up." As soon as he spoke up, Chloe shivered slightly. She didn't even dare to look him in the eye. "I don't mind that you've been married once. Every man had several women when they were young. But you've already divorced. You should break up with the past cleanly. Why are you still keeping in contact with her?" Otto was old, but his voice was resounding. "Tell me, what do you think my granddaughter is?" Everyone's gaze fell on Ethan. He put away his phone calmly after stealing one last glance at the screen. There were still no messages from Olivia. Ethan sat up straight. He did not falter when faced with the two leaders of the Carlton family, nor did he lose any ground to them, even if he was younger than them. "Mr. Carlton and Mr. Carlton Sr., I promised that I would marry Marina. So, I will do it. And as for Olivia, you should already know her circumstances." Ethan's voice was emotionless. The Carltons couldn't tell if he was hiding his feelings. "The Fordham family is bankrupt. She saved Connor's life by herself. In terms of relations, she is my ex-wife. In terms of reason, she saved Connor's life. Should I just stand by and do nothing?" His words were impeccable. Otto grunted and said, "There are a lot of ways to take care of someone. But I've heard that you've been living under the same roof recently. You can't guarantee that you two won't reignite the flame. The Carltons are not nobodies. I don't care how much of a playboy you were. But now, you have to give my granddaughter an explanation." Chris chipped in and said, "You two are getting married anyway. You should live together with Marina from now on." Ethan wanted to say something. Chris and Otto both had their eyes on him. Otto said forcefully, "Young people these days care about the dates. February 14th is Valentine's Day. Register your marriage with Marina on that day." Chris and Otto's unrelenting barrage of words gave Ethan no chance for rebuttals. Moreover, his marriage with Marina was practically set in stone. Marina knew that Ethan's feelings for Olivia were complicated recently. She grasped her sleeve tightly. She was afraid that Ethan would go back on his word. Ethan raised his glass and said calmly, "Okay." Marina sighed in relief. A smile reappeared on her face. "Gramps, Dad, I told you that Ethan would not let me down." Otto looked at Ethan deeply and said, "It better stay that way." Chris also added, "Olivia is Chloe's daughter. She can be considered part of the Carlton family. We'll take good care of her if you don't. I'll take care of things on her end. I don't want to see you contacting her starting tomorrow." Ethan's fingers tightened around his glass. His eyes darkened, but he didn't say anything. He originally thought he was only telling Olivia that he wouldn't go home because he was angry. He didn't expect it to come true. Now, he couldn't even go home even if he wanted to. He was stuck in the Carlton residence. He was forced to sleep in the same room as Marina. It was getting late. Marina got out of the bath and changed into silky and revealing pajamas. She slowly walked toward Ethan. Ethan didn't turn to face her. Even as he sat there, his back remained unbent. He had one hand on the armrest, and the other was holding his phone tightly. He had a worried expression on his face. Marina could clearly sense that Ethan's attitude toward her had changed. She even spoke in a cautious tone. "Ethan, are you waiting for an important call?" Ethan didn't even raise his head. "Yeah. Ethan, it's getting late. You should go wash up." Marina said with a blush, "I'll wait for you here." In the dark of the night, an owl flew over the trees. It was hooting. The Miller residence has been around for a long time. Its surrounding environment was great, and it was normal for there to be wild animals from time to time. Olivia had just fallen asleep. She hadn't gotten into a deep sleep yet. She immediately opened her eyes when she heard the owl hooting. Normally, Ethan would already be home at this hour, but he wasn't home yet. Madame Burgess hadn't been staying in recently, too. She was the only one in the enormous house. The room was in complete darkness. There were only some warm yellow lights in the yard. She saw a large owl as soon as she opened her eyes. It was perched on top of the tree outside the window. Its eyes shone eerily. The image of Belle's body appeared in Olivia's mind again. Once she thought about it, it was as if Belle's body filled the room. She even imagined the scene of Belle jumping off the building as if she had experienced it herself. She felt the wind howling in her ears and her body falling onto the floor heavily. She saw her blood all over the floor. She screamed in terror. She was covered in cold sweat. At this moment, she regretted not trying hard to keep Ethan home. She reached for her phone on the nightstand and was about to hit the dial button. Then, she came back to her senses. What was she doing? She turned on the projector and picked out a TV series. Then, she got off the bed to get some food. She waited in the bedroom. She was thinking that Ethan should be home by now. Madame Burgess had told her that he had never spent his nights away from home. She thought that he would come home if she waited. She waited until her eyes were sore. The owl was still perched on the tree, looking in the direction of the bedroom. It was already 4 a.m. One thing was clear to her: he was not coming home tonight. Olivia thought that she no longer cared. But at this moment she realized she couldn't cut Ethan out of her life completely. She wasn't able to let go of the love she had for so many years in a couple of months. She hugged her legs and rested her head on her knees. Her head was filled with the image of Ethan and Marina sharing a bed. It pained her to think about that. She did not sleep for the entire night. She stayed up until the owl left. She looked at the cold and empty bed beside her, and she gave herself a self-deprecating smile. Her phone on the nightstand rang. She quickly accepted the call. Chloe's voice came from the other end. She kept insisting that Olivia go over to the Carltons. She said that she had made Olivia's favorite breakfast and that Chris wanted to meet Olivia. Olivia hung up emotionlessly, but her body got out of the bed subconsciously. She hadn't eaten breakfast made by her mother in many years. Chloe, in her memories, was a kind and loving person. She was a great cook. She rarely cooked, but every time she did, it would leave Olivia deeply impressed. Before she knew it, Olivia had arrived at the Carlton residence. The servants welcomed her courteously. Chloe looked as elegant and dignified as always. Olivia could see that Chris had treated her well. The few times Olivia met her, she had a smile on her face, unlike when she was with Jeff. She never smiled much when she was married to Jeff. Chloe's love and indifference were both reflected on her face. When she was married to Jeff, she was cold toward Jeff and Olivia. She only ever cooked when she was in a good mood. Olivia was able to sense the tension between her parents at a young age. So, she tried her best to be obedient. Even if she loved Chloe's cooking and wanted Chloe to attend her school's parents' meeting, she would never bring it up. She used to think that if she got better grades and was more obedient, her parents would get along more. And that they would bring her to the theme park on her birthday. But in the end, all she got was her mum leaving her. Chloe saw Olivia standing at the entrance. She quickly came over to hold her hand. "Liv is here. Come over quickly. Are you hungry?" I've made breakfast. Chris was not too uptight for once. He said with a smile, yeah, come and have a taste. Your mother made these just for you. Olivia, I was also shocked by what happened to your father. If you don't mind, you can treat me as your father. The Caro residence can also be your home. Olivia could tell that Chris wasn't lying. But she wasn't moved. There are things that she just can't get over, even if she spent her whole life trying to do so. After she was pulled to the dining table, Chloe put a bowl of spaghetti carbonara in front of her. Chloe then said, eat up, I remember that you loved to eat spaghetti carbonara when you were young. Olivia didn't move. She has loved spicy food since she was young. Her favorite breakfast was spaghetti arrabbiata, not spaghetti carbonara. Chloe proceeded to bring some more food to Olivia. Sandwiches, deviled eggs, and stuffed mushrooms. Olivia smirked and put down her cutleries. If you don't have love for me, you don't have to pretend like you do. You don't like these. I should have remembered properly, Chloe muttered. Chris clenched his fists, cleared his throat, and said, these are all Marina's favorites. His words were like a sharp blade piercing Olivia's heart. Look at that. What a loving mother. She remembered all of her stepdaughter's preferences, yet she couldn't even remember what her biological daughter liked to eat. Olivia wouldn't have felt so bad if Chloe at least remembered one dish she liked. She stood up and turned to leave but noticed the door of the first floor's bedroom opening. Ethan and Marina walked out of the door one after the other. Olivia had known that the marriage between Ethan and Marina was set in stone. But knowing and seeing were two entirely different things. She stared at Ethan, who walked out of the bedroom. Their eyes met. A hint of surprise appeared in Ethan's eyes. He opened his mouth like he wanted to explain something. But nothing came out in the end. Chloe said, Ethan, did you sleep well last night? If you're not used to the bed, I can get someone to make custom bedding for you too. After all, you'll be sleeping here regularly after you get married. Treat this like your own home. You can let me know if you need anything. Marina also started to play her part as a loving daughter. She said with a smile, thanks for being so considerate, Mum. It was true that we didn't sleep well last night. A trace of shyness flickered across her face. It was clear that she was implying something else. Olivia finally understood why she was invited over. It wasn't that Chloe missed her. She intentionally called her over to intimidate her and scare her away from Ethan by making her see the truth. It was so ironic. Her biological mother was all smiles when talking to her stepdaughter. She remembered all of her stepdaughter's preferences. But she couldn't remember her own daughter's favorite breakfast. Maybe her birth was an accident. Olivia used to think that there must have been some reason why Chloe mistreated her. She thought all mothers loved their daughters. But now she knew that Chloe was not like other mothers. It was because she didn't love her. That's why she couldn't remember her preferences. Marina was the daughter of the man she loved. That's why she had to find ways to gain her favor. Olivia looked at their family of 4. She was the only outsider here from the start. She realized that Ethan's betrayal was not the most painful thing. The most painful thing was the mother she had been missing for more than 10 years coming back and destroying the illusion MSHE had of her. Before she could recover from that, her mother had hurt her once again. She did it repeatedly. It was like she kept cutting into her wound before it could heal. Olivia withdrew her gaze from him expressionlessly. She couldn't stand the sight of these people before her. Congratulations to you, Mrs. Carlton. May your wish finally come true. Since you already started a new life, don't come looking for me anymore. Olivia turned around decisively and was about to walk away. Chloe anxiously walked up to her and grabbed her hand. Liv, you're mistaken about me. All I am trying to do now is to make peace between you and Marina. As Chris said, we're all family. Olivia said with a cold smile, I am a Fordham, not a Carlton. Liv, why are you still as stubborn as before? Why can't you be more forgiving? Chloe reprimanded Olivia with a stern expression. "You wouldn't be divorced if you managed your marriage properly. But new Ethan is already with Marina. You need to accept this reality, stop holding on to the past." Olivia was so angry she could feel her stomach starting to hurt. Her head was also throbbing. She almost thought that she was hearing things. Was that something a real mother would say? Olivia clenched her fingers and forced herself to calm down. She looked Chloe in the eye and said slowly, "So, from your perspective, I am the one that's clinging on to Ethan. Everything is my fault." Chloe answered without hesitation, "Am I wrong? I've heard that you're still living together. Liv, do you understand the concept of a divorce? You're still young, so stop this now. If not, you'll bring trouble to yourself. You'll also cause Ethan and Marina to be mocked. There should only be two people in a healthy relationship." Olivia was no longer able to tell if the pain came from her heart or her stomach. She felt like ants were gnawing at her, causing her pain all over. Olivia held in her sadness. She had so much she wanted to say, but instead, she smiled and said, "So that's how I am in your eyes." "Mother, don't yell at Olivia. She's still young, so it's natural for her to make mistakes. We should tolerate each other's mistakes since we're a family. I'm okay with it." At this moment, Marina's display of generosity was a sharp contrast to Olivia's pettiness. Chloe said with a righteous tone, "Don't worry, Marina. I gave birth to Liv. I will give you a satisfactory explanation. I won't allow her to come between you and Ethan anymore." Olivia felt like all her organs were bleeding. She even felt the taste of blood in her mouth. But she didn't want to show her weakness to these people. So she held it back. The taste of blood was spreading in her mouth. She was about to speak when Ethan said coldly, "She wasn't in the wrong. I was the one who wanted to take care of her. Ethan, I know you're a passionate and loyal person. You don't have to lie for her sake. She has been a liar since she was young. I know her too well. She'll do anything to get what she wants." Olivia was clenching her fingers so hard her knuckles were pale. Even the corner of her clothes had been distorted by her grip. She didn't want to explain herself anymore. It was true. She did pretend to be sick once when she was young. That was because a classmate of hers said that when she was sick, her mother, who was usually busy, took a day off to stay home. She would take care of her gently and make her anything she wanted to eat. That was why she pretended to be sick. All she wanted was her mother's attention. If only her mother would put her palm on her forehead. If only her mother would look at her with concern. If only her mother would ask her if she was well. She would have been satisfied for a long time. But her childish pretense was easily exposed. She didn't give up. She spent a whole night in a cold bath. She developed a high fever the next day. She thought that her mother would definitely care for her gently. She wondered if her mother would bake her a cake. She even decided on the cake she wanted to have. A teddy bear cream cake. But when Chloe went to her bed, she looked down at the flushed face. She said coldly, "Why are you pretending to be sick again? Why are you so naughty? Send her to school, Victor." "But Mrs. Fordham, she doesn't look so good. Maybe she is really sick." "How could she be sick? She is such a healthy child. She's definitely pretending. You don't have to send her to school today. Let her walk there herself." Chloe left after she said that. She didn't care even when Olivia was calling out to her with her hoarse voice, telling her that she wasn't pretending. She walked away as decisively as the day she left for good. She didn't turn back even once. She would have known that Olivia wasn't pretending if she put her palm on her forehead, but she wasn't even willing to do such a simple thing. When she was walking, Olivia fell into the snow. She asked in a whisper when Victor carried her up, "Mr. Victor, do you think my mother loves me?" Her words were heart-wrenching to Victor. So much so that he almost couldn't speak. "Miss Olivia, there isn't a mother in the world who doesn't love her children." Olivia's face lit up. "Is that so? I didn't lie to her this time. Can you please tell her that I am really sick this time? I really want to eat the teddy bear cream cake that she makes. But what happened was Chloe went out in the morning. She went for a beauty treatment, had afternoon tea, and attended a music concert. Victor called her. She replied coldly, "Why are you telling me? I am not a doctor. Get her a doctor if she's sick." Olivia was in a daze from the fever. She kept calling for cake in her dreams. She kept calling out for the cake until the fever subsided. She looked at the snow falling outside. Victor brought her a teddy bear cake. She smiled happily. Mum must have made this right. Yup, she found out later that the cake was made by the chef. Her mother did not take care of her. She didn't even ask about her. Time passed. Olivia watched as the faces of her mother in the past and present overlapped. Truthfully, her mother wore a cold expression and was harsh to her. Olivia heard from her classmates that most parents liked children with good grades. So, she worked hard to improve her grades just to see her mother smile. She was more hardworking than anyone else. She had always been one of the best students in her class since she was a kid. She always thought that her mother would pay more attention to her if she worked harder. If she dropped to second place, she would work hard without rest to get back to the top of the class. She did not expect her mother to see her persistence as nothing to be proud of. Neither did she expect her mother to think that she was stubborn and underhanded because of her hard work. Olivia suddenly laughed. Her laugh was bone-chilling. Ethan frowned. He wanted to put in a good word for her. Chloe continued to say, "Liv, Marina is a good woman. It wasn't easy for her to have her own family. I beg you, can you just let Ethan go? I don't want to see Marina sad anymore." This is the first time that I've heard someone who interfered in a marriage get called a good woman. Mrs. Carlton, have you ever thought about how she came between me and Ethan while you were feeling bad for her? I will not comment on what happened in the past because I don't know what happened. But since you're divorced now, you should respect each other's boundaries. You are only 21 years old. I can send you to a school overseas. You still have a long life ahead of you. Chloe reached out to touch Olivia's face. You're my daughter. I truly hope that you can also find your own happiness. Olivia reacted strongly and pushed Chloe's hand away. Don't touch me. She was like a hedgehog. She had curled up in a ball and raised her spikes. If she knew this was how her mother was going to be, would she still have hoped for her return for so many years? Mrs. Carlton, you only need to pursue your own happiness. As for me, you've never loved me. Why act like you feel guilty? It's disgusting. Liv, I'm still your mother. How could you talk to me like this? Your father must have failed to raise you properly. Keep my father out of your mouth. You're the one person in this world who has no right to talk about him. Mrs. Carlton, stop trying to morally blackmail me. What I do with the rest of my life has nothing to do with you. Olivia glared at her and said, "The biggest mistake I've made in my life was to come to you and ask for your help." Olivia closed her eyes. She could see herself chasing after Chloe throughout the years. She never did understand why her mother was always unhappy. She always thought that her mother might be happier if she was more obedient. Even after Chloe had left for years, Olivia would find excuses for her whenever she missed her. She thought that Chloe only left because she didn't love Jeff. She thought that Chloe must have her reasons for leaving her daughter behind. When she hadn't reunited with Chloe, her image of her stayed as a gentle and kind woman. She thought that Chloe would miss her as much as she missed her. Now, it would seem like their emotions were not on the same wavelength. Olivia took a deep breath. She swallowed the bloody taste in her throat once again. When she opened her eyes, they were clear. Olivia said slowly, "Ms. Parker, Mrs. Carlton, I hereby sever all ties with you. Just pretend like you never had a daughter. I'll pretend I never had a mother." Chloe slapped Olivia in the face. "Olivia Fordham, are you listening to yourself? Why did I give birth to such a rebellious daughter? Why are you so rude? Chloe clutched her chest and stared at Olivia angrily. How did you turn out like this? Chris quickly came over and held Chloe's hand. He took her side because she was the woman he loved. Olivia, your mother is just looking out for you. Do you know she has heart problems? You shouldn't anger her like that. Come apologize to her. Normally, Marina wouldn't have cared about what happened to Chloe. But Olivia was here. She wouldn't give up on a chance to disgust Olivia. She held Chloe and pointed her finger at Olivia, saying, Ms. Fordham, I know you blame me for taking Ethan from you. But no matter what, you shouldn't anger your mother so much. Mother, are you okay? Butler, go get her a glass of water. Olivia thought that there must be something wrong with the world. She was the one who got slapped. But she was also the one being reprimanded. Chloe's slap was powerful. It messed up Olivia's hair. Her hair covered half her face. Blood began dripping to the floor from her chin. Ethan was the first one to notice and went over to her. Are you okay? Ethan said with concern. Olivia slowly raised her head. Her nose was bleeding profusely. It was not a regular nosebleed. The blood was flowing endlessly. Ethan panicked at the sight of the blood. Raise your head. Ethan quickly took a few pieces of tissues and stuck them into her nostril. But the tissues were unable to keep the blood back. They were quickly soaked in blood. Chloe was shocked. She ran over in a panic and said, What's happening, Olivia? I thought I didn't hit your nose. She wanted to hand Olivia some tissues, but Olivia slapped her hand away. Don't touch me. Olivia said to Chris, Mr. Carlton, may I use your toilet? Go ahead, Chris said urgently. He regretted butting into their argument. It was supposed to be between mother and daughter. Olivia went into the toilet alone and closed the door. The blood just flowed profusely into the basin when she lowered her head. It was not only her nose. There was also blood in her throat. She threw up some blood and watched as it swirled in the basin. Was she dying? Ethan stood at the door. His eyebrows were furrowed. He thought she should be fine. He had only gotten her to do a full-body medical examination recently. But the amount of blood that flowed from her nose clearly exceeded that of a normal nosebleed. It was gushing out. The sight of it was alarming. Chloe came back to her senses at the sight of Ethan's worried expression. She said, You don't have to worry. She has always loved pretending to be sick. Marina added, Mother, I didn't know she was so manipulative that she would use such a method to get attention. That's right, she has been a cunning one since she was young. Her father doted on her too much. That's why she's become such a spoiled brat now. Chloe then looked at Ethan and said, Ethan, don't be fooled by her. She has always been in good health. It's impossible for her to bleed so much from a slap. I didn't even touch her nose. Chris said, All right, stop talking. How can a nosebleed be faked? What can't be faked these days? Chloe retorted. Ethan glared at Chloe and said, I'm curious. Is Olivia really your daughter? Chloe paused for a bit and said, Of course. Really? Could have fooled me. I thought Marina was your biological daughter. Ethan's words were incredibly sarcastic. Chloe felt insulted, but she did not know how to respond. She had wanted to say something, but the door was unlocked. Olivia walked out. There was a large, mottled stain of blood on her chest because she hadn't been able to avoid it in time. She had temporarily plugged her nose with tissues. Her slender face looked frighteningly pale. She looked like she'd be blown over by the wind. Chloe did not feel guilty at all. She said, Tell me, are you pretending to be sick? I didn't even touch your nose just now. Even now, her first thought wasn't to show concern for her daughter but to question her. Olivia didn't want to waste her words on Chloe. She pushed her to the side and headed out. She realized that she shouldn't have desired something like a mother's love from the start. Ethan grabbed her wrist tightly and said, Wait here, I'll get someone to bring you to the hospital. Olivia stopped in her tracks. She looked at Ethan's concerned expression. She might have been happy in the past, but all she had for him now was endless hate. In principle, Ethan and Chloe were very similar people. There was almost no difference. Both of them had nothing for her, but they pretended to care. She stood straight and looked at Ethan seriously. "What if I want you to take me to the hospital?" The words were like a shockwave. It shocked everyone. Ethan frowned and said, "Olivia, stop messing around." Olivia's throat was still filled with the stench of blood. She smiled and said, "Ethan, if I said you have to choose between me and Marina, who would you choose?" Chris stared at Ethan intensely. Even Otto appeared out of nowhere. Otto slammed his cane on the floor and said, "That's right, that's what I want to ask too. Ethan, will you leave with her or stay here? You have to decide between your old flame and new love." Ethan finally understood that Olivia was only biding her time when she acted docile these 2 days. She bared her fangs now. Chris also chimed in, "Think carefully before you speak. If you choose Olivia, I will announce that your wedding is cancelled." "Dad," Marina stomped her foot. She was the only one who knew the truth. She didn't want things to end up the way it was now. "Shut up. He has been thinking of another woman before your marriage even began. If you really got married to him, there's no telling what would happen. We're doing this for your own good." Otto continued, "All right, since everyone's here. I need an answer from you today. If you choose Olivia, I will make things easy for you. A man should be responsible for his actions. But if you choose my granddaughter and continue your relationship with her, then don't blame me for whatever I do to you." Everyone's gaze fell on Ethan. Who would he choose? Ethan had no choice when everyone was looking at him. He looked at Olivia and said, "I have no plans of cancelling my engagement with Marina." Marina swallowed nervously. She quickly looked at Ethan and asked, "Ethan, does that mean that you pick me?" Ethan nodded. It was like a huge stone had been lifted off Marina's chest. She ran to Ethan excitedly and wrapped her hands around his arm. "I knew you loved me, Ethan. Dad, Grandpa, did you hear that?" The anger on Otto's face subsided. "You better mean what you say. I'll be counting on you to take care of my daughter from now on." Chris patted Ethan on the shoulder. Olivia had expected this outcome. But even if she had known, she still felt a freezing chill in her heart when she heard it. She pulled her hand away from Ethan and said, "I respect your decision, Ethan." Ethan watched as she left. He had no choice since Otto was there. Chloe thought about it for a while. Then, she went after Olivia. Olivia straightened her back as she left. She was like a lone wolf dragging her hurt body to a secluded area to heal. "Liv," Chloe caught up to Olivia. "I want to talk with you." Olivia looked at Chloe, who was panting. She knew this woman better than she ever did after today. She decided that she would not hold any unrealistic expectations of this woman anymore. "Don't worry, Mrs. Carlton. I will not bother your son-in-law again," Olivia said coldly. Chloe blocked her way and said, "Liv, give me 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes." Olivia looked at her coldly. "You've already achieved your goal. The person you need to watch is Ethan, not me. If there's nothing else, I'll be going." "Liv." Olivia tasted blood in her throat again. She frowned and pushed Chloe aside. She quickened her steps to get away from her. Chloe called out to her from behind her, then she fainted. Olivia turned back and saw that. She instinctively wanted to go check on her. It would seem like she wasn't lying about her heart condition. She noticed that Chris had come after Chloe. So she turned and left quickly. She then went to a deserted corner and began to throw up blood. Olivia leaned against a tree before slowly sliding down. She wiped the blood on the corner of her mouth with her hand and laughed at herself. She was such a failure. Throughout her life, she hadn't been able to keep anyone by her side. Her family and her lover all went to Marina's side instead. The thought of that made her chest hurt so much she almost couldn't breathe. Then, She knelt on the ground with a hand holding onto a branch. She kept throwing up blood. She looked at the puddle of blood. Her first thought was that it was lucky that she didn't embarrass herself before the Carltons. She hadn't eaten anything. Her stomach felt like it was burning up after she threw up several times. It was unfortunate that she forgot to bring her medication with her. She had been in a rush. She curled up into a ball under the tree. Her consciousness began to fade. She wanted to call for an ambulance on her phone. She didn't want to die. She couldn't die today. Her eyesight was getting fuzzy, and her fingers were trembling. She slowly inputted the numbers into the phone. She only needed to tap on the dial button. But she lost consciousness before it could happen. Darkness consumed her. She fell onto the ground with a thud. In the last flashes of her consciousness, she thought she saw Ethan driving away in a car. She could also hear footsteps. A person came before her and sighed. The person then crouched down and lifted Olivia up. Olivia thought she was a goner. She had begun to recover after the chemotherapy, even if it left her body weak at first. Maybe it was because she was in a better mood when she was on the island. She felt like she was slowly getting better and had not vomited blood in a while. She didn't know if it was because she got emotional. But she had never vomited so much blood before. It was like red was all she saw. She fainted despite her best efforts to stay conscious. When she opened her eyes again, she immediately smelled disinfectant. She noticed the walls around her were white. Her stomach seemed to be better. It didn't hurt as much. "Olivia, you're awake. Are you feeling better?" A familiar male voice came from beside her. She looked toward the voice. It was Colin, whom she met on the cruise ship. His eyes were filled with concern. Olivia had just regained consciousness. She said weakly, "Did you save me?" "That's right. I saw you on the side of the road as I was heading out. You had blood all over you. I was scared to death." Colin scratched his head and said with an embarrassed expression, "I'm sorry, Olivia. I wanted to apologize to you for what happened on the ship. But I couldn't reach your phone." "It's okay. I understand. It was just an accident." Olivia looked at the needle in her arm. Half of the liquid was still in the IV bag. "That's right. Is Mr. Fordham doing well?" "I've just returned from overseas. I wanted to visit him, but I didn't want to intrude." Olivia's eyes darkened at the mention of Jeff. "He isn't doing too good. He hasn't regained consciousness yet." "I appreciate the sentiment. Visitation is not allowed yet." "I understand. You have to stay strong, Olivia. Everything will be better." Colin consoled Olivia. He then asked, "Are you sick? I saw a lot of blood on your clothes, but I didn't see any wounds." Olivia smiled weakly and said, "I'm fine. I accidentally bumped my nose and had a nosebleed earlier." "Did it look scary?" Colin patted himself on the chest and said, "The bloody stains were scary. But I'm relieved that you're okay." "Don't worry. Of course, I'm okay." Olivia reached for her phone on the nightstand. She realized that it had shut down. She knew she shouldn't have said those words at the Carltons today. She knew she crossed the line with Ethan. Olivia understood that she shouldn't provoke him. She risked disrupting her own plans by doing that. But she was just too angry. She wasn't able to hold it in. She knew that Ethan probably wouldn't let her off this time. Colin handed her a power bank and said, "Olivia, you need to stay the night for observation. You must be hungry after sleeping for so long. I'll go buy you something to eat." Olivia nodded and said, "Thanks. No need to thank me." Colin smiled brightly. He walked out the door with brisk steps. A nurse came in to help her remove the needle in her hand. She said with an envious look, "Miss, your boyfriend is so good to you. He had been taking care of you the whole time you were out. I've never seen a more caring man than him." Olivia was taken aback. She explained with a smile, "He's not my boyfriend. He's my younger brother. I'm sorry, I was mistaken." The nurse stuck her tongue out and removed the needle gently. "Miss, your brother has booked a few medical examinations for you. It's getting late. The examinations will be scheduled for tomorrow. Rest well tonight, and no food or drinks after 10 p.m. There's no need. I've already done medical examinations before. It's just a nosebleed today. I only fainted because I have been pretty frail. Okay, but I still recommend that you do some in-depth examinations. After all, many things can cause a nosebleed. Your results from before might not reflect your current health. Some conditions can worsen pretty rapidly. Thanks, I'll think about it. Olivia got off the bed and freshened up a bit. She saw that Colin hadn't returned yet. She went to the corridor and wanted to pay for her hospital bills. She ran into Chloe when she stepped out of her room. She was also wearing patient attire. The first thought Olivia had when she saw Chloe was that they were fated to meet each other. But only as strangers. As she turned to leave, Chloe caught up to her and said, "Just give me a moment, Liv. I have something I need to tell you." Olivia didn't stop. In fact, she sped up. Chloe ran after her. Then, Olivia only stopped when she heard a nurse say anxiously, "Mrs. Carlton, slow down. Your heart can't take much more of this." Olivia stopped in her tracks when she heard that. Chloe finally managed to grab her hand. She said while panting, "Please, just give me a moment, Liv." Chloe looked pale and weak without makeup on. Even her lips were slightly bluish. "Mrs. Carlton, I thought there was nothing left to say between us." "5 minutes, Liv, give me 5 minutes. Please," Chloe begged. The nurse standing next to them said, "Mrs. Carlton has a heart condition, miss. Please do not agitate her anymore." Olivia was put on the spot. She couldn't walk away now. "All right, 5 minutes." She walked into her room. Chloe followed behind her. They each sat on a corner of the couch. Chloe moved next to Olivia and took her hand. Olivia struggled for a bit. She then gave up because she didn't want to risk agitating Chloe. "Seems like Chris isn't treating you that well. You had good health when you were with Dad." Olivia deduced that Chloe developed a heart condition due to mental stress. There were only 2 other ways she could have gotten a heart condition. One was that she was born with it. The other was unhealthy habits. Neither of those could have been the case for Chloe. Chloe shook her head and said, "Chris is good to me. Really, really good to me." Chloe didn't want to make Olivia feel uncomfortable. She quickly changed the subject. "I left you when you were young. But there were some things that your father probably hasn't told you. Don't you want to know why I left him, Liv?" Olivia's other hand grasped the couch tightly. "Wasn't it because you fell for another man? Let me tell you a story, Liv." Chloe's story wasn't mind-blowing. It was more melodramatic. Chloe and Chris had known each other since they were kids. The Carltons were a family of soldiers. Chris was also obligated to join the army. He began to take part in covert missions when he was a teenager. He promised Chloe that he would be back to marry her once the situation got better. But news of him dying on the battlefield was spread. Chloe was heartbroken. The Parker family promised her to Jeff. Jeff gave her 3 years to forget about Chris. And so Jeff waited. Chloe could not betray his kindness. She got married to him under the pressure of her family. But she had only ever loved Chris. It was the same, be it 3 years or 7 years. Chris was the love of her life. But just as she was prepared to accept her life as it was, she heard the news about Chris. He was saved by someone when he was hurt. But he had temporarily lost his memory. He married the woman who took care of him after his injuries healed. By the time Chloe heard the news, Chris already had a child of school age. That was a blemish on their love. It was something that Chloe couldn't get over. Even after she also had a child of her own, she was still hung up about the past. She couldn't forget about the feelings she had. These years, she had been neglecting everything around her. That was why she developed a heart condition. Chris' wife later died in an accident. He also recovered his memory. Chloe didn't want to have any regrets. So, she went to him without considering any consequences. Olivia laughed so hard that tears came to her eyes. Am I supposed to clap for your epic story of undying love? Olivia had misunderstood. She thought Chloe felt guilty after seeing her bleed. She finally realized. This middle-aged woman had all the love she wanted since she was young. Her life was all smooth sailing. Everyone around her doted on her. And she had only experienced hardships in her love life. That was why she was still living in her own world at this age. That was why she came to talk about how hard her life had been. Mrs. Carlton, can't you live without Chris Carlton? Chloe was crying as she told her story. She described the missed opportunities and misunderstandings between her and Chris as incredibly sad and painful. She didn't know how to react when she heard what Olivia said. There were still tears in her eyes. She looked comical as she tried to keep the tears from falling. It was as if she was wondering why Olivia didn't feel any compassion for her. She had such a sad life. She began to wonder if Olivia was truly heartless. Mrs. Carlton, losing Chris might have been the worst thing that ever happened to you. But do you know what it means to have a family destroyed? Do you know how helpless I felt when my family left me one by one? Do you know how much pain I felt when I went from being a princess to a nobody that anyone could spit on? Olivia smirked and said, in your world, a mosquito sting requires medical attention. How would you ever understand how I feel? I have to try my best just to stay alive. Olivia was envious of her mother. Chloe was the kind of person who only lived for herself. Nothing was more important than her feelings. Not even Chris, who had always loved her. Not even her own daughter, who had been chasing after her and begging for the smallest bit of attention. All these can be sacrificed for the sake of her pursuit of love. Chloe didn't understand what Olivia was thinking. She thought Olivia would understand her after knowing her story. She didn't expect her to be so emotionless. Chloe felt defeated, but she remembered that Olivia had always obeyed her as a child, so she had one last option. Liv, I know you have suffered these years. I wasn't with you then. But now I'm back. I'll never let anyone hurt you again. Olivia met Chloe's gaze. She hesitated slightly for an instant when she saw the sincerity in her eyes. But Chloe then said, I've been there since Marina was a child. She is a very outstanding woman. I think she suits Ethan well. Can you please listen to me and let her have Ethan? Olivia was dumbfounded, but Chloe had more to say. Chloe noticed that Olivia was silent. She continued, it's not that I love her more. The thing is, you're already divorced from Ethan. If you continue to cling to him, your reputation will be ruined. Another thing is, the two of them already had a child together. Can you not break them up for Connor's sake? Olivia had always had this feeling that she was adopted when she was younger. She started to feel like that again. She wondered how Chloe was able to utter those words. She claimed not to love Marina more. Yet, every word she said was in Marina's interest. Olivia looked at her and said with amusement, have you ever thought about this? Marina is the third wheel in this relationship. And Ethan is the one clinging onto me, not the other way around. I'll be thankful if you can convince him to stay away. Chloe was taken aback. Her brows began to furrow. She had a look of disbelief. Liv, I know you might have a big misunderstanding with me. But please do not take your anger out on Marina. Olivia was shocked. Chloe had suddenly knelt down while she was talking. Tears flowed from Chloe's eyes. She said in a sad tone, I'll use the rest of my life to make up for the sufferings I caused you. My only request is that you let Marina off the hook. Please just let her and Ethan be. Olivia's condition had stabilized, but she felt her blood boil when she heard Chloe's words. She began to see red. There were so many things wrong with what Chloe said, but Olivia couldn't form any words in her mouth. She was so angry her entire body was shaking. The door opened with a bang. A group of people were standing at the door. The Carltons were standing at the door. They were furious when they saw what was going on in the room. Chris was especially angry. He quickly approached Olivia and Chloe. He was relatively gentle to Olivia before, but now, he was staring daggers at her. "What are you doing, honey?" Chris said in a serious tone as he helped Chloe up. Before Olivia could say anything, Chris said harshly, "Ms. Fordham, no matter what prejudices you might have against her, she is your mother, after all. She had been thinking of you all these years. The worry she felt caused her to be unwell. She also has a pre-existing heart condition. Why do you keep agitating her? Will you only be happy after you've killed her? Please stop, honey." Chloe attempted to defend Olivia. Chris patted her on her hand and said with an intense expression, "Ms. Fordham, believe it or not, I do feel bad for you. I truly want to treat you like my own daughter. I want to allow Chloe to carry out her duties as a mother. But I now know why Ethan wanted to divorce you." Olivia's stomach was feeling better when she woke up. But after hearing what these two had said, she was so angry she couldn't speak. The pain in her abdomen began to spread to her entire body. It hurt so much that her brows were furrowed tightly. She mustered all her strength to squeeze the words from between her teeth. "Why? Because a woman like you doesn't deserve any kindness. Look at your mother, she almost died giving birth to you. Not only are you not repaying her gift of life to you, but you also treat her badly. Are you not worried that karma might get back at you?" Olivia swallowed the blood in her mouth and glared at Chris. "Are you finished? If you're finished, get out of here." She didn't want to say another word. Talking with people like him was a waste of time. She wasn't one of theirs. She was at fault no matter what she did. Olivia was in a lot of pain. She just wanted to rest. She had no energy to argue. But the Carltons were offended, especially Marina. She finally had a chance to vent her frustration. Ethan wasn't here. The Fordhams weren't here. Olivia was all alone. Marina began to take her anger out on Olivia. She shoved Olivia to the ground hard. "Olivia, how shameless are you? You are already divorced from Ethan, stop clinging to him." Olivia was in so much pain that she was covered in sweat. She bit her lip. She was so weak she couldn't speak. Chloe saw that something was wrong with her. She leaned over and tried to help her up. "Liv, what's wrong? Why are you so pale?" The heart-wrenching pain in her stomach consumed her. Cold sweat covered her body. She tried to respond defiantly, but she realized she was too weak from the pain to speak. Marina pulled Chloe's hand away from Olivia and said, "Mum, didn't you say she loved to pretend? I didn't even push her that hard, but she fell. I think she's pretending again." Chloe recalled the time Olivia pretended to be sick when she was young. She looked hesitant. Marina said with a cold expression, "Stop pretending, Olivia. No one here cares if you're in pain." Olivia was in so much pain that she was losing consciousness. She could faintly feel that Marina had kicked her twice on the leg. The heel of Marina's shoe hit a joint on her leg. It made the pain worse. Marina was exacting her revenge on Olivia. She could never forget the time when Olivia pinned her down and hit her. She wasn't blind, she could see that Olivia wasn't feeling well. But she was taking this chance to attack Olivia because she couldn't fight back. She kicked Olivia as hard as she could while Olivia couldn't stand up. She wanted to vent her anger. "Stop kicking her, Marina." Chloe reached out and tried to stop Marina. Marina didn't usually care about what Chloe had to say, but she didn't mind at the moment. "Mum, didn't you say she loves to pretend? She deserves to be kicked." As she was speaking, she kicked Olivia a few more times. She even slapped Olivia in the face. "You bitch, stop pretending." Olivia wanted to argue, but she couldn't speak. She could only feel her consciousness fading slowly. She could feel something picking her up in her daze. She could feel someone talking, but she couldn't hear what was said. She murmured, "Home, I want to go home." A man's voice said next to her ear, "All right, I'll bring you home." She was then put on the person's back. Her head slumped weakly onto his shoulder, and he carried her away with steady steps. For some reason, Olivia suddenly recalled something that happened to her as a kid. She was pushed over by some bullies. The children were throwing pebbles and mud at her. "You're a motherless bastard. Your mother is shameless." I heard she ran away with another man. She retaliated in anger. She fought with the bullies. But she was beaten until she had no strength left. She was hurt all over. Jeff found her later. She held his hand and said while crying, "They called me a motherless bastard." Jeff smiled gently and patted her head lightly. "Silly girl, you have me. But I miss Mum. Although your mother is in another country, and you are very far apart, she misses you too." A glimmer of delight flashed on her face. But the glimmer quickly dimmed. "Why did she leave me if she misses me?" Jeff crouched down before her and said gently, "Olivia, everyone has a right to pursue their own happiness. Your mother finally found her happiness. Even if she isn't here, it doesn't mean she doesn't love you." "What about you, Dad? Will you leave me one day like Mother did?" Olivia asked while she tugged at his sleeve. Her expression was filled with worry. She had already lost her mother. She didn't want to lose her father too. Jeff knew what she was thinking immediately. "No, I will never leave you." Olivia broke into a smile. Jeff crouched down and carried her on his back. "Don't worry, Liv. I will always be with you." She laid on her father's broad back with a faint smile. "Dad, if you ever find your own happiness, I'll also give you my blessing." "Silly girl, you're my happiness." Ethan saw a sweet smile appear on Olivia's lips while she was unconscious. It was the first time he saw such an innocent expression on her in a long time. Olivia held his hand tightly and yelled, "Don't go. Don't go." Ethan said softly, "Okay, I won't go." The next instant, Olivia opened her eyes and jumped into his arms. She said with a nasal voice, "Dad." Ethan was rendered speechless. Olivia's eyes slowly came into focus. She saw a white shirt. She looked up and saw Ethan's strong jawline. The hope was gone from her eyes. She remembered that Jeff was still unconscious in the hospital. There was no way he could have been here. "Why did your nose bleed?" Olivia couldn't believe that was Ethan's first question. She could smell the scent of an unfamiliar shower gel on him. She recalled the fact that he slept in the same bed as Marina last night. She quickly moved away from his embrace. "I hit my nose. My mother accidentally hit the wound when she slapped me," Olivia said calmly. Ethan stared at her face. He wanted to find hints of her lying. Olivia looked at him adamantly and said, "What? You don't believe me? Weren't you the one that said I was in good health and that nothing could be wrong with me?" "That's true," Ethan agreed. It wasn't clear if he was trying to convince himself or Olivia. He didn't notice the fleeting smirk that crossed Olivia's lips. He did look at her latest medical examination report. There were no issues with her health. Olivia noticed that she wasn't in the Miller residence. It was the seaside apartment that she had lived in before. It would seem like her confrontation bore some fruit. Now that the Carltons were pressuring Ethan, he didn't dare to openly live with her again. "Since you're fine, you can start work tomorrow. The HR department is done with the preparations." "Okay," Olivia replied calmly. "I'm fine now. You can head back now. Don't let the Carltons misunderstand." Olivia knew what she was thinking immediately. "All right, your desk is over there, Olivia. You can go and get settled down." The HR employee was still pretty courteous. "Thanks." Oliver looked at her employee ID, and her thoughts wandered. Her first job in life was not as a doctor but as a salesperson. She could hear people chattering when she walked in. She must be someone special. Mr. Ingram handed her file to HR personally. "But I'm curious. She's a top medical student. Why would she become a salesperson? She could probably get a job in any of the best hospitals in the country." "Who knows? Maybe she likes a challenge." The bonuses of some of our sales department colleagues are several times higher than the salary of a doctor. Because of Brent's influence, Olivia might not have an office to herself. But she had a desk in the best location. The sunlight came in through the window and shone on her desk. There was also a tiny potted plant on it. Olivia stretched her body leisurely in the sunlight. There were 3 teams in the sales department. She was in Team C. Sophia Linden, the leader of the team, introduced Olivia to the team. Everyone was very busy, so the introductions were brief. They quickly went back to work after. Olivia was still feeling lost after a while. She went to ask Sophia for advice. "Ms. Linden, I'm new, so I'm not too familiar with the job. What should I be doing?" "Oh, right, Olivia. I forgot to tell you that the sales department is also called the Hell department. We have a very strict evaluation system. An evaluation is conducted every 3 months. The worst of the team gets demoted to Team C. If the same team gets ranked C more than twice in a row, a team member will be let go. Then someone new will join." Olivia heard about how intense the workplace could be. "Does that mean if we're still Team C by the end of this month, someone will be let go?" Sophia patted her on the shoulder and said, "That's right. And you're new here, so the person getting fired." Olivia understood. "Is probably going to be me, right? Do your best. This is the project we're trying to get done right now." Sophia gave her a bunch of documents and quickly went back to her desk. Meanwhile, at the CEO's office, Ethan was rubbing his temples. He asked with his eyes closed, "How is she doing?" "She's already started working." Brent paused for a moment and asked, "Mrs. Miller doesn't need to work for money. Is there a need to send her to the Hell department?" He found it harder and harder to understand what Ethan was thinking. Ethan opened his eyes and played with the pen before him. He said in a lazy tone, "She'll only know who to seek help from after she experiences some hardships." It was thanks to the Carltons that Olivia was finally free from Ethan's control. Although they were still in the same company, a lowly salesperson like her couldn't possibly meet the CEO. The only inconvenience was that she got removed from the secretary's office. She was distanced from the secretaries. And that strayed her from the goal she came here for. Olivia could only put her hopes on Jack. She hoped that he could dig up something useful on his trip. As she was lost in her thoughts, someone said with a sigh, "Why do I have to be the one to hand in the strategy chart again?" Olivia turned and met the eyes of Norma Talbot, the person whose desk was next to hers. She was an earnest person. "What's wrong, Ms. Talbot?" Norma pushed her hair behind her ear and said sheepishly, "It's time to hand in this project's strategy chart. As you know, we're already the C team. We were ranked last in the previous month. I don't dare to walk into the secretary's office. I'll be scared to death if I meet Mr. Ingram. Is Mr. Ingram very intimidating? You're new, so you don't know. If Mr. Miller is the king of hell, Mr. Ingram is the guardian of hell. He was so stern that he scared the cleaner's daughter to tears last time." Olivia nodded thoughtfully and said, "If that's the case, I'll go for you. I'm new here anyway. I don't mind being scolded." "You're too kind, Olivia. Thank you so much." Norma quickly handed the file to Olivia. Olivia looked at the file in her hand. She smiled. This was her chance to get closer to the secretaries. Unbeknownst to her, the colleagues who were all smiling a moment ago changed their expressions. "I envy how naive young people are these days. Another one who doesn't know her place. How many have there been this year?" Norma crossed her arms and said disdainfully, "That's the only way to get closer to Mr. Miller. She probably hopes to catch his attention by being around there. Why else would anyone go to the secretary's office and risk being scolded?" TSK, if I recall correctly, the last one had her arm broken by Mr. Ingram and thrown out, right? Let's make a bet. How many days will she last before she quits? I'll take that action. Loser buys everyone lunch. Comment by Soon Young Gu. Take what action? Olivia went to the top floor. She glanced at the door at the end of the corridor. It was shut tightly. She subconsciously sighed in relief and went into the secretary's office. The secretaries who were busy with work looked at her when she entered. Nancy winked at her and said, "I heard you transferred to the sales department, Ms. Fordham. Was it because you didn't like US?" Olivia smiled and said, "Of course not. I thought I wasn't capable enough for this position. I didn't want to cause trouble for Mr. Miller. So I transferred to the sales department to work on myself." "What a pity. You were a sight for sore eyes. You were gone too soon." Nancy was no slouch. She knew that Olivia was special. Olivia was the only person who ever brought food for Ethan. One moment, she was a secretary. Next, she was a salesperson. It must have been someone's orders. How else could she just change jobs so easily? That was why she didn't mind getting closer to Olivia. "Olivia, surely you're not here to chat. How can we help?" "Ms. Giles, this is our team's strategy chart. Can you please hand it to Mr. Miller for me?" Nancy thought about it for a while and quickly understood. "Leave it to me. Be careful in the sales department. The people there are all very cunning." "Thanks, Ms. Giles." Olivia took out the presents that she had prepared. For the men, she had tie clips. For the women, she prepared brooches. "I thought I would be here, so I had prepared presents. Please take one, Ms. Giles. I love thoughtful people like you." Nancy toyed with the brooch and said, "Thanks." Olivia proceeded to hand the presents to the others. They knew she was somehow related to Ethan, so they didn't dare to refuse. Olivia stopped before Grace. She noticed that Grace had been working the whole time she was there. She didn't even spare a look at her. Grace didn't react even when Olivia placed the present on her table. "Ms. Engel, this is for you." Grace raised her head and adjusted her glasses. She said sternly, "Did you join the company to do pointless things like this?" "Olivia, don't mind her. That's just how she is. You don't have to give her a present if she doesn't want it." Nancy winked at Olivia and said, "Don't worry. I'll hand over the strategy chart to Mr. Ingram personally." "Okay, thanks. I'll not disturb you guys anymore." Olivia stole a glance at Grace. Grace had gotten back to work. It was as if she only cared about working. Grace and Nancy were polar opposites. Olivia wondered which one of them was the suspicious one. Olivia believed that the spy could not hide forever. The truth would definitely come out. Even if she didn't make a move, the spy might not be able to remain in the dark. She had embedded tracking devices into the brooches. So she was one step ahead of the spy this time. Olivia was deep in thought. She didn't think that there would be anyone walking around on the top floor. She walked right into another person. A familiar voice came above her head. "You're an adult, right? Why aren't you watching where you're going?" Olivia quickly moved away from him. She thought Ethan was in his office. She didn't expect him to sneak out. "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. I'll be going now." She almost didn't even look in Ethan's direction. She lowered her head, apologized, and scuttled away. She was afraid that Ethan might ask her to stay. Olivia quickly got to the elevator. As the doors opened, Brent and Kelvin came out of the elevator. Olivia suddenly thought about how Norma described Brent as the guardian of hell. She instantly had the image of the two of them as hellish soldiers. She thought the look suited them. She covered a smile as she entered the elevator. Ethan saw that smile. He hadn't contacted Olivia for the past 2 days. And she stayed away, too. It was as if she was trying to sever ties completely. He noticed her coming up from the security cameras and was waiting in the corridor for an unexpected encounter. It angered him to see her smile when she saw Brent and Kelvin. She ran away like she saw a ghost when she ran into him. Ethan said with a dark expression, "Find out why she was up here." "Yes, Mr. Miller." Brent had the answer very quickly. He handed Ethan the strategy chart. Ethan took a glance at it and dropped it. "What kind of trash is this?" Get me the person in charge. The file fell onto the table with a loud bang. The sound caused the cleaner who was wiping the shelves to jump in surprise. Everyone stopped talking after Olivia went back to Team C. Norma smiled brightly and said, "Thank you so much, Olivia." "No problem, it wasn't that hard." After a while, Sophia came storming out, who handed in the strategy chart. Before Olivia could speak, Norma realized something was wrong and immediately shifted the blame. She said, "It was Olivia. She insisted on going to the secretary's office to show her face." "What's wrong, Ms. Linden?" Sophia glared at Olivia and said, "What did you say to Mr. Miller? Why is he so angry? Now he wants to question me." The matter blew up. Normally, Ethan would be communicating with the sales director if he had a problem. He wouldn't usually call for a team leader. Norma's bubbly demeanor quickly turned sour. "Olivia, I've said it before. You have limited experience. Since you joined Team C, you should focus on learning. Instead, your mind seems to be filled with all sorts of nonsense. Did you make Mr. Miller angry? Did you think you could do whatever you wanted because you had the looks? Who do you think Mr. Miller is? Do you know what happened to the last employee that tried to seduce him?" Olivia felt that she had been unlucky lately. Nothing was going her way. She went to the secretary's office once. The colleague who was all cordial before was already reprimanding her. The words that came out of her mouth were so unpleasant. Olivia said calmly, "I didn't get to meet Mr. Miller. I just submitted the strategy chart to the secretary's office. I don't know how I could have angered Mr. Miller. Nothing like this ever happened when we handed in the strategy charts. Why did something happen as soon as you did it? Stop pretending. You're the one to blame for this." "That's right, you should bring her along, Ms. Linden." The others began chipping in. They wanted to pin everything on Olivia. Olivia finally understood what it meant to be in the rat race. Olivia followed beside Sophia. Sophia said with a gloomy expression, "Olivia, you are on a 3-month probation. You know what you need to do for me to pass you." Olivia knew. Sophia wanted her to take the fall. Did she think Ethan was stupid? Olivia said with a cold smile, "Understood, Ms. Linden." The elevator doors opened. Sophia immediately bowed when she saw Brent. "Nice to see you, Mr. Ingram." She noticed that Olivia only nodded her head. She patted Olivia's back to signal her to bow as well. Brent quickly said, "Stop wasting your time. Mr. Miller is waiting for you." A hint of nervousness crossed Sophia's face. "Mr. Ingram, can you please let us know what's going on?" "About Mr. Miller. You'll find out when you go in." Brent kept up his cold demeanor. He stood at the door and said, "We're here." Sophia felt weak in the knees. This was her first time at the CEO's office. Brent opened the door, and he said, "Mr. Miller, they're here." He then turned and left. Sophia's legs were trembling, she began to walk stiffly. Olivia almost burst out laughing. All traces of the arrogance that Sophia had moments ago vanished. "Mr. Miller, you asked for me." Sophia was so nervous she could barely even manage to utter a complete sentence. Olivia's eyes fell on the cleaner in the corner, who was cleaning the bookshelves. Cleaners usually have fixed working hours in the morning or at night. They don't usually work while the boss is in the office. She wondered why Ethan would allow someone to clean the office while he was still there. He was a man who was very concerned with his privacy, after all. She observed the cleaner. The cleaner had a hunched back and a bony physique. The exposed skin was tanned. The cleaner's head was lowered so Olivia couldn't see the face. An ashtray landed beside Olivia's feet with a loud sound. It shocked her. Sophia was so frightened that her knees gave way, and she dropped to the floor. Ethan looked at Olivia and asked, "What's so interesting that you had to stare?" Olivia snapped back to reality. Ethan threw the strategy chart before Sophia. "Is this the strategy your team came up with? A monkey can do better than that." Ethan didn't pull any punches when it came to insults. This was the first time Olivia had seen Ethan at work. She realized that she wasn't the only person that he treated badly. Sophia was scared out of her mind. She anxiously said, "Please don't be angry, Mr. Miller. This proposal is—" "Olivia, you say it." She looked back at Olivia and saw that she had no fear in her eyes. Even her back was straight. Olivia's eyes were also calmly meeting with Ethan's. She thought Olivia was very brave. She quickly dispelled her drifting thoughts and snapped back into reality. Olivia saw her pleading gaze tinged with threats. She said, "Which part of my proposal are you not satisfied with, Mr. Miller?" Ethan narrowed his eyes and said, "You made this." Ethan knew she had only been working for 2 days. Normally, the team leader wouldn't even let a new employee take part in such an important job. This proposal was linked to the quarterly evaluation and year-end bonus. It was apparent that the team leader wanted Olivia to take the fall. Olivia was not stupid. She said, "Yes, I took part in it." Sophia was not satisfied with Olivia's words. If she only took part in the planning of the proposal, she wouldn't be able to take full responsibility for it. "Which did you take part in?" Ethan asked. In Sophia's expectant gaze, Olivia pointed at the proposal and said earnestly, "I printed the whole thing out with my own hands." Sophia was at a loss for words. Ethan held back his smile. He was the only one who knew her obedience was just a farce. He knew she was a fighter at heart. He had lost count of how many times his head was hit by the things she had thrown at him. Sophia hissed through gritted teeth, "Olivia, why are you joking in front of Mr. Miller? Why are you talking about printing? Aren't you the one who suggested this proposal? Please understand, Mr. Miller. She's still learning the ropes." Olivia thought about the team meeting yesterday. She was new and had unknown origins. Sophia feared that she might be a spy from another team. She didn't even allow Olivia to sit in the meeting. Olivia didn't mind. She wasn't here to work anyway. But she was displeased that Sophia tried to pin all the blame on her. She was angry that anyone thought they could just bully her. Olivia didn't even need to speak. Ethan tapped the table with the fingers of his right hand. His gaze fell on Sophia nonchalantly. "Are you telling me that your team's proposal was made by a new employee who just started?" "That's right, Mr. Miller." Sophia had stood up. Her back was slightly bowed. She had a subservient expression on her face. If that's the case, she should be the team leader instead. Sophia's expression changed immediately. "Mr. Miller, that isn't a great idea. She is a new employee. She has no achievements on her record. She was formerly a medical student and has no experience in sales." Ethan slammed his palm on the table and stood up. "So you do know she's just a new employee. Yet you tell me that a proposal for a project worth millions was made by her. Are you mocking my company? Are you telling me that none of the veterans are better than her? What nonsense are you sprouting?" Sophia was shaking in fright. She kept stuttering, "Mr. Miller, LL. Do it again. If I see such trash from you again, take the entire team and get out of my company." "Yes, Mr. Miller." Sophia quickly picked up the proposal. Olivia left the office with Sophia without looking back. She wondered why Ethan pulled such a stunt. Once they were back at the Team C office, Sophia said with a cloudy expression, "Come with me to my office now, Olivia." "Okay." Sophia shut the office door with a loud slam. As soon as Sophia entered the office, she threw the proposal at Olivia. "Go and submit your resignation to the HR department now. There's no place for a person like you in my team." Olivia gave her an icy smile and said, "How bossy of you, Ms. Linden. I did not make any mistakes. On what grounds are you firing me?" Sophia vented all the frustration she suffered from Ethan on Olivia. Her face was twisted in anger. She no longer wanted to keep up the facade. "On what grounds?" "The fact that we don't need an idiot like you in the workplace. I'm an idiot because I don't want to take the fall. Even if I did, would Mr. Miller believe it? Or do you think is as dumb as you are?" Sophia slammed her hand on the table and yelled, "Olivia Fordham. That's me, but if there's nothing else, I'll be excusing myself, Ms. Linden. Also, I am a contracted employee. If you want to fire me, you should acquire the company first." Olivia left the office without looking back. She even went to the pantry, got a glass of warm water, and swallowed some stomach medicine. She didn't care about the gaze of others, nor did she care about their biting remarks. Everyone understood for a fact that the failure of the proposal had nothing to do with her. But her non-compliance had angered Sophia. Even if she stayed, Sophia would make her life hell. Still, these cunning veterans would never risk offending the team leader for a new employee like Olivia. They began to isolate her. They wanted to force her to quit. Even if she didn't quit today, she would still be fired when the results of the quarterly evaluation were out. No one felt the need to befriend a person that was soon to be gone. Naturally, they treated her with disdain. "Damn, I didn't think you had that in you, Olivia. You acted so prim and proper. I thought you were docile. But you dared to stand up to Ms. Linden. She was assigned to our department out of nowhere. She must have someone backing her. Naturally, she's bolder with her words." Olivia turned slowly to look at Norma. "Ms. Talbot, since you know I have a backer, why are you still barking so loudly? Aren't you afraid that my backer will hear you?" Her words caused the entire office to fall silent. What did she say? Was she here to restructure the workplace? Norma was in shock. She didn't expect it to play out like that. Who would flat out admit that they had a backer? She recovered from her daze, and her face flushed in anger. "What did you say?" "I said your barking is too loud. It hurts my ears. Don't do it next time." Olivia patted Norma on the shoulder and went back to her desk. She took a look at the time and said, "It's getting late. I'll be going home now. Everyone, work hard and come up with more proposals. Good job." Olivia knew they didn't want her to help in the planning anyway. So she didn't bother to trouble herself. Her colleagues were all shocked. They had wanted to isolate her, but it seemed like she didn't care. She even looked happy. Sophia kicked on a trash can. She called out to Olivia through gritted teeth, "Olivia Fordham, did I say you could leave?" Olivia lowered her head to look at her watch and said, "It's time to go home." "Why is everyone still working then? They're doing overtime. And why aren't you doing the same?" Olivia shrugged and said, "Because I don't want to." She patted Sophia on her shoulder and said, "Try your best, Ms. Linden. So that you can deliver a proposal that Mr. Miller is satisfied with by tomorrow." Sophia's face grew red with anger. Her breathing became labored from the intense emotions. She had to pat herself on the chest to calm herself. "Are you okay, Ms. Linden?" "I'm fine." Sophia slammed the door and said, "Go to the conference room." Olivia hummed happily when she recalled Sophia's constipated expression. Even the heavy rain didn't dampen her mood. She had already asked Everly to pick her up. Everly should be here any moment. Olivia raised her head and met Ethan's eyes. He was sitting in his black luxury car. It was apparent that he was waiting for her. Olivia nodded her head toward him as a greeting. Kelvin turned to look at Ethan and said, "Mrs. Miller doesn't seem to be getting on, Mr. Miller." In the back seat, Ethan's expression was hard to discern. "Let's go." Olivia sighed in relief when she saw the car driving away. She saw Everly's car in the distance, so she went to the side of the road to wait for her. In a turn of events, Ethan's car turned around and accelerated right next to her. Olivia was splashed with water from a roadside puddle, and the black car sped away into the distance. Everly's car stopped next to her. She tilted her head, looked at Olivia, and said, "Hey, did you go for a shower?" Olivia cursed at Ethan as she sat in the front passenger seat. Everly was laughing at her misfortune. "I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it myself. Ethan was so childish. He splashed you with muddy water because you didn't get in his car." That's so evil. Olivia wiped herself with a towel. She looked upset. That's how petty he is. I don't know if I was possessed when I fell for him. You could have been. Evely agreed and nodded her head. She sized up Olivia before asking, long time no see. Have you been well? Olivia didn't tell her about the incident where she vomited blood. Yeah, the chemotherapy was pretty effective. Evely noticed that Olivia was in a better mood than before. Even her facial expressions looked more lively. Evely quickly said, why don't you consider doing it again? If it goes well, and you get to the condition where you can have surgery, you could go straight for surgery. Actually, Olivia propped her face up with her hand and looked at the scenery outside the window. I'll go for another checkup after a while. Evely's eyes lit up. She said, have you changed your mind, Liv? I want to live a bit longer. At least until I find out who the person is. What person? Olivia shook her head and said, it's nothing. Olivia had made up her mind. Even if she went to hell, she had to bring the person who made her life miserable down with her. Ethan saw Olivia get soaked from the rearview mirror. His anger dissipated slightly from the sight. He knew that Olivia was trying to sever her ties with him that way. A few months ago, all he wanted was to be rid of Olivia. But now that she stopped clinging to him, he became the one who couldn't let go. Ethan felt irritated whenever he thought about her distant eyes. He pulled on his collar and said, let's return to the Carlton residence. Marina was delighted to see him. She prepared a feast for him. Chloe was recently discharged from the hospital. She still hasn't completely recovered yet and looked a little pale. But she still tried to be a good host and kept giving Ethan more food. On the other hand, Ethan was polite and distant. He focused on playing with Connor. But no matter how much he played with Connor, Connor rarely smiled. Most of the time, he gazed outside the window. He was only a little happier when Ethan was with him. After dinner, Ethan brought Connor to the living room and played there. Marina pushed Erina and said, go, play with Dad. Erina had been afraid of Ethan since she was born. Normally, she wouldn't even dare to approach him, much less play with him. Come over here, Ethan said while waving his hand at her. Erina walked to his side shakily. He reached out and picked Erina up gently. He comforted her in a soft voice, don't be afraid. Ethan thought that Erina looked a lot like Marina, but her eyes resembled her father's. He picked up a book and said, come, I'll tell the two of you a story. Marina saw the three of them together and swore to herself that she must marry Ethan as soon as possible. After the children went to sleep, Ethan and Marina entered their room simultaneously. Ethan locked the door and took out a blanket from the wardrobe expressionlessly. Same as last night, you take the bed. I'll sleep on the couch. Marina said with a sad face, Ethan, we're getting married soon. We're already a family. Ethan glanced at her coldly. His gaze was so cold it looked like he was ready to kill someone. Marina Carlton, how long has he been gone? You're already getting so restless. Ethan grabbed her collar and said slowly, don't forget who you are, cousin-in-law. Next morning, Olivia appeared at the office full of energy. It was a stark contrast compared to her colleagues with their bloodshot eyes and tired faces. It was like a human walking into a group of zombies. It was like she didn't remember the insults yesterday. Olivia greeted Norma politely, good morning. Her bright smile annoyed Norma. Norma grabbed a cup of coffee and went back to her desk. She then muttered sarcastically, some people sure have it easy. Olivia didn't let it slide. She said innocently, I wanted to take part in the planning. But you guys thought I was new and was afraid I might leak the proposal. You didn't even let me in the meeting. Don't act like it's my fault now. Olivia's words triggered Norma's anger. She threw her documents on her table and said, Olivia Fordham, what the hell are you talking about? Olivia shrugged and said, nothing, just that you're a hypocrite. Olivia Fordham, you better watch your mouth. Who do you think you are, talking to me like that? Sophia interrupted their argument and said, "Stop yelling. I heard you from a distance away. Are you animals?" Norma quickly ran to Sophia and played the victim. "Ms. Linden, she was being arrogant and insulting her colleague. Enough, stop making a scene. Do you want the other teams to make fun of us?" Sophia glared at Norma and said. Norma still wanted to argue. But Sophia had already calmed down. "Olivia, stay back after work tonight. Come with me to negotiate a contract with Mr. Lincoln." She paused and added, "This is work." She didn't even give Olivia a chance to refuse. Olivia could tell that Lincoln was a tough nut to crack from the amused expressions of the onlookers. In the afternoon, Olivia heard someone say in the bathroom, "Mr. Lincoln is so perverted. Olivia is in for it tonight. TSK, Ms. Linden is a smart one. She's getting a signed contract in exchange for Olivia. If Mr. Lincoln is happy and signs on, we'll be able to overtake Team B." If I were Olivia, I would be more humble. Why would she try to stand up for herself as a new employee? Everyone has been bullied like she has. She just had to be different, arguing with the team leader right from the start. Maybe she really has a backer. Impossible. Ms. Linden has already looked into it. Mr. Ingram doesn't have a girlfriend. He doesn't even have female friends. What backer could she possibly have? The two colleagues chattering faded into the distance. Olivia came out from the cubicle. She laughed to herself at the thought of Sophia using her as leverage for a contract. She was wiping her hands when she noticed a cleaner taking out the trash. She approached her and asked politely, "Auntie, sorry to disturb you. May I ask if there is a vacancy in the cleaning crew?" Comment by Soon Young Gu, "Does Auntie need westernization? Do Americans use Auntie? My mum is unemployed. I'd like for her to try applying for a job here." The cleaner said with a friendly expression, "That's fine. I think we aren't hiring right now. But I'll keep an eye out for you." "Thanks, Auntie." Olivia took out a new hand cream from her bag and said, "Auntie, if there ever is a vacancy, just let me know. This is a small token of appreciation. Thank you for your help." "It's nothing. I just have to ask around for a bit." The cleaner didn't refuse Olivia's gift. They talked for a little bit more, and then Olivia asked the question she had on her mind, "Auntie, is the cleaning crew responsible for cleaning Mr. Miller's office?" "Don't even think about it. His cleaner is handpicked by himself. That's not one of us." "What does that mean?" "I saw a cleaner wiping his bookshelves when I was handing him a proposal yesterday. I thought it was weird. Why was there a cleaner there when Mr. Miller was working?" "Young lady, you may not know this, but she has quite the background." Olivia asked because she thought it was strange. She didn't expect a real answer. What background would a cleaner have? "I heard that she saved Mr. Miller's life before." Olivia was fascinated, but why is she only a cleaner if she saved his life? She had no one. She's used to the job. That's why she kept doing it. But she only cleans Mr. Miller's office. There's not much to clean. The load is fairly light. Olivia nodded and said, "I see." She talked with the cleaner for a little bit more, then left. She made a mental note of the mysterious cleaner. Evening came. Olivia tagged along with Sophia to meet Lincoln. Sophia was touching up her makeup in the car. She threw occasional glances at Olivia. "Olivia, I see that you're still young. If you can secure this deal with Mr. Lincoln tonight, I'll forgive what you did yesterday." "Is he hard to negotiate with?" "For other people, yes. But for a pretty woman like you, it's a different matter." Sophia was finished with her makeup and leaned toward Olivia. Olivia could smell the heavy perfume she was wearing. The perfume made her feel a little suffocated. She furrowed her brows. "Olivia, it's easier for women to climb the ladder than men. We have inherent advantages that men don't have. Do you understand what I mean?" Sophia had a complicated look in her eyes. Olivia was not dumb. She knew what Sophia was talking about. "I understand. I think you're a smart woman, too. You won't disappoint me, right? Olivia wanted to tell Sophia that she didn't care if she was disappointed. But she saw that they were arriving at their destination, so she held her tongue. She didn't want to cause another scene. Yeah, I'll be waiting for your good news, Olivia. Sophia looked at Olivia from head to toe again. The simple work attire worn by Olivia exuded a professional charm. Her well-proportioned figure was alluring. Even as a woman, Sophia couldn't help but be tempted by Olivia's legs in stockings. Sophia was sure that an old pervert like Lincoln would succumb to Olivia's charms. In the Golden Horizon Hotel, Olivia was carrying a file folder. She was deep in thought while following behind Sophia. Sophia thought that was because Olivia had never been to such a luxurious hotel. She whispered to Olivia, "Olivia, after you get Mr. Lincoln to sign the contract, I'll make you a permanent employee. As long as you stay with our company, you can stay at hotels like these whenever you want." Olivia didn't tell her that Ethan prepared a penthouse suite on the top floor of the hotel. It was a special suite designed according to her preferences and featured everything from an infinity pool to a rooftop garden. It was as luxurious as a suite could get. Now that she thought about it, Ethan really used to dote on her. As she was thinking of the good old days when she was with Ethan, she saw Marina holding Ethan's arm when she looked up. They were walking toward a private elevator from the restaurant. Her eyes met with Ethan's, but she quickly looked away. It was like they didn't know each other. Olivia accidentally dropped the file folder. She quickly crouched down to pick up the documents that were scattered on the floor. Sophia was annoyed. "Olivia, you can't afford to be so careless when we meet Mr. Lincoln. I'll go touch up my makeup." Olivia quickly went to the washroom. She thought she had already let go of her feelings for Ethan. But whenever she saw him with another woman, her heart ached uncontrollably. That was the man who used to love her and her only. Her fingers clenched when she thought about Ethan bringing Marina to the place she used to love visiting. The thought of Marina using her bathtub, wearing her robe, and sleeping with her man. It was unbearable. It was only natural. There was no way she could have let go of the feelings she felt so strongly for years in just a couple of months. Sophia knocked on the washroom door and said, "Olivia, what's taking you so long? Let's not keep Mr. Lincoln waiting." Olivia collected her emotions and opened the door. Her expression was back to normal. "I'm ready." Sophia looked at her slightly pale face and said, "What kind of touching up did you do?" "Never mind. You can use my lipstick. This is the trendiest color this year that men like." The bright lipstick glided across her lips. It gave her a radiant glow. Olivia's complexion improved significantly. Sophia then sprayed some perfume on her. It was a rich and enchanting fragrance. Olivia frowned at the smell. But she was covered in it before she could decline. "Okay, let's head in. We can't keep Mr. Lincoln waiting." Sophia confirmed with Olivia yet again, "Are you sure you know the rules of the dinner table? I don't need to give you a refresher course, right?" "Yeah, I'm sure." "Okay, that's good." They arrived at the private dining room. It was unclear if Sophia had sent a picture of Olivia to Lincoln because he was unexpectedly early for once. And he was full of smiles, too. Unlike in the past, when he's always 30 minutes late intentionally. "Mr. Lincoln, I'm so sorry. We're late even though we're the ones that invited you. I'll have to drink a toast in apology. It's my pleasure to wait for beautiful ladies like yourself." "Sophia, this one looks unfamiliar. Why don't you introduce us?" Sophia smiled shyly and said, "Mr. Lincoln, this is Olivia. She's new. Say hello to Mr. Lincoln, Olivia." Lincoln was around 40 years old. He was the typical middle-aged man, greasy and pot-bellied. He squinted his eyes when he sized up Olivia. He was even more satisfied after a closer look. He thought the picture he was sent had been touched up. But she looked prettier in person. "Hi, Mr. Lincoln." Olivia greeted him expressionlessly. Lincoln immediately reached out to pull her closer to him. "Olivia, I'm an old acquaintance of your team leader. Come over and sit." Olivia didn't let him touch her. She chose a seat far away from him. She looked at Lincoln's awkward outstretched hand and Sophia's shocked expression. "Have a seat. Don't be shy." Sophia was speechless. She cursed at Olivia inwardly and held Lincoln's arm. She then said with a smile, "I apologize, Mr. Lincoln. She's new, so she doesn't know better." Lincoln's greedy gaze swept across Olivia's youthful face. He didn't seem angry. "She's still young. It's understandable. Please, have a seat, and let's bring out the food." Sophia had planned for Olivia to sit beside Lincoln. She didn't expect Olivia to pull a trick like that. She had no choice but to sit on the right side of Lincoln. A few of his trusted aides sat to his left. These aides are usually the ones that encourage the women to drink more alcohol. If they get the women drunk, the men could have their way with them. Lincoln was not in a rush. The night was still young. He engaged in idle conversation from time to time. Olivia glanced at his hand from the corner of her eye. She saw his hand almost touching Sophia's inner thigh. Sophia was clearly unhappy about it. But she didn't dare to oppose Lincoln, so she wore a forced smile. "Mr. Lincoln, have you given the contract some consideration? If you don't help me out soon, I will really get fired," Sophia said with a flirty tone. No one knew what Lincoln's hand did to Sophia under the table. She let out a soft cry. Lincoln said in a jolly voice, "Sophia, you need to have patience. I need to see how sincere you are if you want me to sign the contract." Sophia met Olivia's gaze and said, "Olivia, Mr. Lincoln wants to see how sincere we are." Olivia smiled and said, "Understood, Ms. Linden." Lincoln saw Olivia stand up abruptly. He looked at her beautiful face and her slender neck. No matter where he looked, she was stunning. He started to feel anticipation when he thought about how he could have this woman for himself tonight. He wondered what Olivia would do to please him. Would she feed him some wine? Or would she feed him some food? His imagination was going wild. Olivia took a piece of pork chop and placed it on Lincoln's plate. "Here, help yourself, Mr. Lincoln." Lincoln was stunned, but Olivia didn't stop. She piled more slices onto his plate. "Why are you looking at me like that? Look at the pork chop. Is this enough sincerity? There's still more if you want. You can have it all." Lincoln looked at the mountain of pork chops on his plate. Then he looked at the sincere expression on Olivia's face. He was stumped. He couldn't tell if she didn't know or if she was just pretending. Her eyes were clear. There was not a speck of pretense in them. He thought about her age and thought it was understandable to be unclear about the rules of the dinner table. Sophia was bewildered. So that was what Olivia meant when she said she understood. She thought the negotiations were done off. Lincoln would surely be severing ties with her. But the truth was that men were exceptionally patient and accommodating to pretty women. Sophia glanced at Lincoln warily. But she saw him smiling. He was not angry at all. He said, "It must be great to be young. Such youthfulness." Sophia rolled her eyes at Olivia. Olivia pretended not to see and went back to her seat. "As long as you're okay with it, Mr. Lincoln." "Of course. How could I hate that a pretty girl brought me food?" Lincoln smiled and reached out to get some salad on the table. But Olivia grabbed it and put some on her plate instead. She acted like she didn't notice Lincoln reaching for it. Sophia was rendered speechless. She was regretting her decision to bring Olivia with her. "Mr. Lincoln, please forgive her. She's still young." She was getting tired of apologizing on Olivia's behalf. Fortunately, Olivia was attractive enough. She was so attractive that Lincoln could tolerate her antics. "It's fine. I find Olivia's innocence very interesting." Sophia took the chance to look at Olivia and said, "Olivia, we were late. Let's make a toast and apologize to Mr. Lincoln for it." Olivia nodded and said, "All right, Ms. Linden. Go ahead." Sophia sighed in relief when she heard Olivia agreeing so readily. At least Olivia wasn't being too outrageous. Olivia obediently stood up and filled up Sophia's glass for her. She then stood at the side with her hands beside her. Sophia coughed lightly and said, "What about your glass? Fill it up, too." "Me?" Olivia looked at her with a surprised look. "You called for the toast." "I didn't." Sophia was so frustrated she felt like she was going to vomit blood. But she couldn't express her frustration due to the circumstances at hand. She glared at Olivia and said through gritted teeth, "If you're not going to drink, then why are you even here?" Olivia looked at her innocently and said, "Didn't you bring me here to eat dinner?" Sophia's fingers were clenching her glass so hard it looked like it was going to break. Olivia added, "But if you like drinking so much, you can drink my portion too." Lincoln slammed his glass on the table with a bang. The smile on his face had faded. "Ms. Linden, it seems your new recruit doesn't want to show me any respect. I think I won't be signing the contract." One of Lincoln's aides chipped in, "What's wrong with this woman? She refuses to drink at the dinner table. If you're not sincere when asking for help, no one would lend you a hand. Please don't be mad, Mr. Lincoln. She has only been with us for a few days and doesn't know any better. I'll drink on her behalf." Sophia downed her glass of wine in one go. She wanted to pour another glass, but Lincoln threw his glass on the floor. "There's no need. I do not like to force others to do things they don't want to do." He threw the contract at Sophia and said, "I have another meeting, Ms. Linden. I'll be going now." As he said that, his eyes were shamelessly fixed on Olivia. His intent was clear. He could already imagine Olivia running toward him and wrapping her hands around his arms. Olivia did indeed stand up, but she placed her hands by her side. Like a waitress, she said, "Have a safe trip, Mr. Lincoln. Don't forget to foot the bill." The confidence in Lincoln's face faded. He was stunned. He had never seen such an arrogant woman in his life. He was boiling with anger, but Olivia asking him to foot the bill made him laugh instead. "Very well, Ms. Linden, I think you shouldn't bother me anymore. We'll never work together ever. Don't, please." Sophia was anxious. She had been negotiating with Lincoln for a very long time. She was about to succeed, but Olivia had ruined everything for her. "It's all her fault. She doesn't know anything. Please be gracious and forgive us one more time. I've planned more interesting activities. It'll be a pity if you leave now. I'll have her apologize to you." Lincoln's eyes were fixated on Olivia. She was indeed a gorgeous woman. He gently stroked the back of Sophia's hand and asked, "What interesting activities?" Sophia grounded her teeth and took a keycard out of her pocket. She said, "Mr. Lincoln, I've already prepared a place where we can spend the night." She initially planned to get Olivia drunk and send her onto Lincoln's bed. But the situation had spiraled out of her control. She had no choice. Lincoln's eyes narrowed when he saw the keycard. "Since you're being so considerate, should we continue with the meal?" "Of course, let's eat." Sophia reassured him, "I'll have her apologize to you even if I have to get her drunk." Lincoln finally stopped in his tracks after Sophia's words. "All right, I'll be looking forward to what you have prepared for me. Please wait for a moment, Mr. Lincoln. I'll have a word with Olivia." "Okay." Lincoln waved his hand and said, "Please don't disappoint me, Ms. Linden." Sophia dragged Olivia out of the room and pulled her aside to a place with no one around. She said, "Olivia, since we're here today, we have to land this deal with Mr. Lincoln. As long as you can make him happy. I'll not hold what happened against you." "Why should I make him happy? He's neither my dad nor my son. Are all your deals secured by making men happy?" Olivia's retort put Sophia on the spot. She glared at Olivia with a look of disbelief and said, "Olivia, this is the workplace, not your school. I'm only guiding you because you have the looks. We're in sales. We need to be adaptable. If you don't want to land this deal, plenty of others would do it. I'll tell you the truth. Mr. Lincoln was willing to come here tonight because of you. You only have to sleep with him tonight to get him to sign the contract. With this, we'll be able to overtake Team B, and you won't be fired. It's a win-win situation." She said these words in a nonchalant tone. Olivia thought it was pathetic. If I need to sleep with everyone to get results, I would rather get fired. All right, you can be noble all you want. But if we can't win over Mr. Lincoln today, we'll both be in trouble by the end of this month. I might get scolded, but you'll be packing your bag. That's fine, I don't mind. Olivia was not in the mood to argue with her. Sophia grabbed her hand and said with a frustrated expression, "Olivia Fordham, do you know you were born for this job? You don't even have to be good at negotiations. All you need to do is get naked on the bed. You can have everything you want. You're already here at Miller Group. Don't you want to climb the ladder? Not really. What about money? Don't you want that? No. Don't you want to achieve results and realize your own worth? Become a leader in the industry?" Olivia shrugged and said, "It's Ethan Miller's company. Why should I work so hard to make him money?" Sophia was astonished. It was the first time she had heard such outrageous statements. You dare call Mr. Miller by his given name? How dare you? Is he a god or a martyr? Why can't I say his name?" Not only did Olivia dare to say his name, she also dared to hit him. Not only that, she's also held the company's shares. Ethan gave her some of the shares before they were divorced. She didn't have to work a day in her life. The dividends from the shares were already a hefty sum. She didn't need to sleep with Lincoln for some measly commission. You're still young. You don't know how harsh reality can be. You'll know how little control over life you have when you're at my age. If you're still angry about me picking on you before, I'll apologize. Sometimes, I have to do things I don't want to as the team leader." Olivia was amazed. Sophia was a salesperson through and through. Forceful tactics didn't work, so she tried a softer approach. "Olivia, are you thinking of your boyfriend? Sleeping with clients is a common occurrence. Your boyfriend might be doing similar things for work, too. Men need to keep up a facade, but so do women. The perfect relationship doesn't exist. Every relationship has its woes these days. Don't be too love-centric as a woman. Money is the most important thing." Sophia sighed and said, "Olivia, I've been through it all. I'm not trying to hurt you. We women need to acquire power by ourselves. Men are always unreliable. You're right about that, Ms. Linden." Olivia looked at Sophia with clear eyes. Under Sophia's expectant gaze, Olivia patted her shoulder and said, "I'll cheer for you. I hope you can steer clear of bad relationships and climb the ladder on your own merit. Good luck tonight. Hope you don't have too hard a time handling Mr. Lincoln and his pot belly." Sophia lost her patience. She tried talking to Olivia for so long, but Olivia didn't listen to anything she said. "Olivia Fordham, who do you think you are? How dare you belittle Mr. Lincoln? Mr. Miller has a toned body. But do you think he would even look at you?" Olivia thought she, of all people, was qualified to speak about Ethan. She thought about Ethan and Marina entering the elevator together a while ago. They were probably having a good time in the room that used to be hers. She smirked and said, "I won't even care if he came before me, stripped, and showed me his abs. Why would I care if he'd look at me or not? Okay, you've got guts, Olivia. I'll make you come running back to me in tears." Sophia walked away after she said that. Olivia rolled her eyes and said, "Crazy bitch." Olivia suddenly heard the sound of a lighter coming from behind her. It was very loud in the deserted corridor. Someone had heard her conversation with Sophia. It was such an awkward moment. Olivia wanted to run without looking back. A familiar masculine voice rang beside her as she was preparing to walk away. "Don't even think about it." She turned around stiffly when she heard the voice. She saw Ethan's familiar face. He was leaning on a white pillar and playing with his lighter. His icy gaze fell on her face. Olivia felt a chill just from that. This was even more awkward than if a stranger had overheard. Olivia raised her hand and said with a stiff expression, "Hi, Mr. Miller. What a coincidence." She wondered why he was here instead of being in bed with Marina. Ethan put away his lighter and approached Olivia. He stood before her and said, "It's not a coincidence. I came here specifically for you." Olivia blinked and said, "Weren't you with Marina?" Ethan grabbed her hand and dragged her into the private elevator. Olivia's body was pressed against the side of the elevator. Ethan slowly leaned in. He said through gritted teeth, "Olivia Fordham, are you never going to approach me if I don't seek you out?" Above is the entire content of episode 6. Thank you everyone for listening.